rock it out. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Yes, say, I believe, oh, I believe in you. I believe, yeah. Said I believe, everything you said about me. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir, yes, sir. Everybody does. Oh, somebody shout, I believe you. One more time, say, I believe, because you say your word. Yes, sir, said I believe. Everybody does. See it, yeah. See it, yeah. See it, yeah. See it, yeah. Said I believe. 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 That you hear. That you say. You're the king. You're the ruler. Said everybody dance, y'all. Put your hand. It's all right to dance this morning. Somebody type in the comments and say, oh yes, I believe. That's, I believe in you. Oh yes, I believe.
Welcome back to week 2 of mental health awareness, right? I did not say mental health or mental illness. I said mental health awareness. We all need information on how to have victory in our lives. You know, when the enemy tries you, he doesn't just manifest stuff all around you. What he does is he sends you thoughts. He sends signals to your brain to cause you to meditate on it, and the things that you think about the most will be the things that grow in your life, right? Whatever you focus on will expand. And so what we have done here at Spirit of Faith Christian Center is we have pulled all of our therapists and our counselors and our physicians, our doctors, really together to give you some information so you can have victory, so you can overcome or you can conquer whatever it is that you may be dealing with. It's like taking your car to the shop for maintenance. Really, I didn't say you were sick because you are here listening to everything that we are saying. No, we want to do preventative maintenance. We want to give you some information that cause you to never have to deal with mental illness. And so that's why this is mental health awareness. As a matter of fact, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. All through the nation. And when you think about mental health, right, and mental illnesses that are occurring here in the United States, stats says that 1 in 5 people deals with some type of mental illness. Now, listen, you may have 5 people in your house right now. If you count, statistically speaking, they're saying 1 of you will deal with that. Well, we want to go against those stats. We don't believe that. We bind that, really, in Jesus' name. I decree that will never happen to your household, right? But it also goes on to say that 52 or 53 million people in the United States deal with some form of mental illness. That is a tragedy to me. When we know the word, we could be conquerors and overcomers in our mind. We'll know how to bring our thoughts into captivity, right? And so that's why we are having mental health awareness. That's why we are bringing this day, to you. This is our final day. If you were not here with us on last week, I want to encourage you to go back and look at last week, because it is here on YouTube, it is here on our Facebook page, it is here available for you to go back and view, all right? Make sure you guys are sharing this page and liking this page, and also follow us, because again, we are always bringing information to you that can increase your life. So again, I want to thank Pastor Mike for allowing us to have this time and this opportunity to minister to the souls of men and women across this world. We love you, Pastor Mike, and so appreciate you. Thank you again. All right. So look, we are about to hear from Dr. Raquel Gordon again. She was here on last week with Yvette. They shared on grief. Well, this time she will be talking about anxiety and depression. What? So many people say that they are depressed. And guess what? You're probably not depressed. You may just be a little sad. So Dr. Gordon is going to help us clarify and deal with whatever it is that you call depression and anxiety. Presenting Dr. Gordon.
Hello, we're here for Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm Dr. Raquel Gordon, psychologist, coach, and I'm here to talk to you about mental health. It's a very important issue during this time, after the pandemic, after all of the stressors that people have gone through. So we're going to talk a little bit more about mental health. I had a bad day, a bad week even. It was almost overwhelming. My heart was racing when my boss called me into the office. And lo and behold, it happened to me. What I see happened to other people. I lost my job. I go home ready to tell my spouse what happened. My daughter runs up and says she got into the college of her choice. My heart sinks. How am I going to pay for that? The level of stress is overwhelming. That's just one of the type of issues that people are dealing with day to day to day. But we can't see it. It's not like a broken leg where we can look at it and see how to help the person. It's all up here, all in their mind. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what to expect, what to look for, so we can help ourselves and help other people, because these are big issues. These are big issues that are turning into bigger and bigger issues for adults, adolescents, children, all handling those issues very differently. So we're going to talk about managing stress, dealing with anxiety, depression, and even people's thoughts of suicide. The state of mental health in America. There's a lot going on. The pandemic has turned things around, and people made it through, but at what cost? At what cost? We survived, or did we thrive? People are in different categories. So we want to look at the big picture. So if we say, what's going on? What is happening worldwide? We're dealing with responses of the virus. We're dealing with financial issues, careers. We're dealing with kids. We're dealing with families. We're dealing with wars, rumors of wars, threats of all types. And so we move forward in our day, but we hear these things. We hear what's going on, and so we try to push forward, but we also have a pause. Like, how does this impact me? How does it impact my family? How does it impact our whole culture? Questions that are in our minds that nobody knows. Nobody knows what we actually think about when we lay down at night and our mind quiets. So we want to think about how do we handle stress? Because we all experience stress. We all have ups and downs in life. That's natural. It's about how you handle those stressors. So today we're here, Mental Health Awareness Month. Our goal is to encourage awareness and to break the stigma. Because so many people feel like, going to a counselor means I'm crazy. They think, oh, it means I'm weak. But anybody who's gone through therapy knows you have to be strong to face the reality of what you're thinking about sometimes. And sometimes you may not even have major challenges, but you're trying to better yourself and get better and better and better. So we want to encourage awareness. So we're going to talk a bit about a few diagnoses, and then we want to break the stigma so people know it's not weakness to seek help. So the squeeze, pressure, there's a lot of that going on. Just as I mentioned, people through the pandemic lost loved ones, multiple loved ones sometimes. How do you handle that? A family disrupted by death. Higher gas prices, we all are dealing with that. If you're driving, you're dealing with it. The loss of a job, stressful environments, all of those type of things squeeze, put the pressure on. So what are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? So there's 6 types of stress. There's environmental stress. So environmental stress are things that are in our environment. We really can't control those. That was like the virus. That's like violence, things that are external to us. That's environmental stress. Then we have physical stress. That could be an injury or an illness, something you're dealing with personally. Then we have mental stress, which is grief, anger, all of those, shame, fear, those stressors. Then we have emotional stress. And emotional stress is one we think about often, like how do I handle stress, decision fatigue, perfectionism, all of those sorts of things. Existential stress, like what is my purpose? Hopelessness, feeling that existential things. And then social stressors, like your relationships with your wife, relationships with your children, relationships with colleagues at work. Those are all social stressors. So there's 6 types of stress. So likely you've dealt with multiples of these over the course of your life. And so the question is, how can we handle those better? But I want to bring some things to light. Cognitive overload. So cognitive overload is when multiple thoughts, multiple stressors are in our life. And we keep thinking about things and thinking about things. How am I going to handle the bills? How am I going to get the kids to school? How am I going to buy a new house? It can be stressors, some good, like buying a house, having a baby. Those are stressful, but they're good. So we all deal with levels of stress. But cognitive overload is when there are too many things going on in your life and you feel that pressure. Some people call it like burnout, where you feel like you're right on that edge. And when you have cognitive overload, it leads to feelings of overwhelmingness, or it leads to error, where you make mistakes. So one of those times of cognitive overload was the Oscars. We all saw the incident. We saw Will Smith. We saw Chris Rock. That one little incident would not send somebody over the edge like that. He likely was experiencing cognitive overload, where there were so many things going on, and good things, like am I going to win the Oscars? But also pressures, maybe from home, pressures that we may not know of. And so that led to error. Now, some people say it wasn't error, but honestly, it was illegal, led him to error, led him to difficulties in his life. So the greatest impact on our life might surprise people. Like people say, when you look at longevity, how do I do the best for myself? Usually they say, oh, exercise, eating right, those sorts of things are what we think about when we think about longevity. But the research says it's social interaction and close relationships. And what did we miss out during the pandemic? social integration, and close relationships. So we have to realize over and over and over again, we may do, kids may do with school, being on their computers, but they're missing out on things. We had meetings on Zoom, but we missed out on that after the meeting, walking down the hall with our colleagues, making a joke, those sort of things. That social interaction is important to our physiology. Social isolation is the public health risk of our time. So Dr. Pinkert, she mentioned that social isolation, even before the pandemic, was an issue, and then it increased. So when we are not able to worship, we're not able to come together as we did before, those were very social interactions where you would see people in the hall after service. Some of those things we lost, and we have to work to regain, but it definitely impacted us. So if we look at the release of neurotransmitters, connection, when you shake hands with someone, when you look someone in the face, when you high-five someone, it just releases a cascade of neurotransmitters within our body, chemicals. So that's serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, all of those chemicals. And you can see on the screen some of the things that those chemicals do. And when we had less of that, or even sometimes none of that, it changed our physiology and changed how we think. So we're going to understand a little bit about mental health, what to look for. Suicidality. This has been a big issue in the last year or so, and it has increased in the last year or so. So in 2020, there was one suicide death every 11 minutes. That's a lot of people that were affected by suicidality. Just think about it, every 11 minutes, someone feels that level of hopelessness and that level of despair. So suicidality, most people know, is injuring yourself with the intent to die. Adolescent suicides in the last year went up 53%. So adolescent suicide attempts, that's a huge number of adolescents who felt that overwhelmed. So we had physical distancing, which we just talked about, school closures. We had all of these things, child abuse, things that were happening in the home, people who were connected. So just think about it. Before the pandemic, we saw our families maybe 2 hours in the morning and maybe 2 or 3, 4 hours in the evening. But now we're with each other all day. And do we really know how to interact with each other? We had to learn, or there were issues. So adolescents were really impacted. African American adults, that's a group that typically suicide was not as big a choice as it is now. If we look, the mayor locally, the mayor of Hyattsville, he lost his life. Former Miss USA, she felt that despair. She lost her life. The Walking Dead star, Moses Mosley, he lost his life. Regina King's son, prominent actress, he lost his life. We have to think about those things. Serious thoughts are going through people's minds when you feel that level of despair. And so many times people say, I didn't see that coming. Where did it come from? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So depression statistics, 1 in 5 adults experience depressive symptoms. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. Women are twice as likely to attempt suicide, but men are likely to complete suicide. And it also notes here that the depression rates tripled during the pandemic. So one of the things we're going to talk about is depression. We often think about major depressive disorder. That's where people can't get out of bed, they're not eating, and we think, oh, I can see that. But there are other depressive disorders. Persistent depressive disorder, which is like a low-level underlying depression that someone may have for an extended period of time, and you may not see that. Or adjustment disorder with depression. Those are the people that we see And they say, hey, Jim, hey. We say, we just saw them the other day, because we didn't know what was going on in their minds. So it doesn't always look exactly as the extreme cases. There can be underlying low levels of depression that still can lead to things that are very significant. This right here shows you a little bit about the severity. There are different levels of depression. Some can be episodic, some can be chronic. So I want you to know, like, we need to talk to each other so we know what is going on in each other's minds, because we sometimes can't see it, or it may not be as extreme as we thought it would look. Anxiety. Anxiety is the #1 mental health diagnosis. There are lots of things going on in the world, and so people think, I'm out of my comfort zone. Things are not the way they used to be, or things are not the way I want them to be. That increases your anxiety. So it's the most common mental health diagnosis. During the coronavirus, approximately 48% experienced extreme anxiety. So that's not just like, hey, I'm having an anxious moment. That's extreme anxiety, where they felt like it impacted their ability to function. So anxiety affects you physiologically, affects you physically, affects you behaviorally. So when we're looking at someone, we may not always be able to see it. So I want to encourage us to talk, connect, those things that we had difficulty doing before. I want to talk to you about seeking professional help, because sometimes we need that support. You know, if you have a small cut, you can put a Band-Aid on it. But if you have a broken arm, you need support. You put that cast on, the doctor puts the cast on, and it supports you. And so therapy can be that support for if you're experiencing mental health issues that are more than just a small issue. So I want people to seek help, to gain support. It gives you accountability, builds skills, builds coping skills, and gives you insight into your behaviors. The ups and downs of life. As I mentioned, we all experience ups and downs. Sometimes it may feel like a raging river. Sometimes it may feel like a calm sea. So depending on what you're going through determines how we act. So we want to learn skills that no matter what is happening, we can proceed. Resilience. So resilience is our shifting. Resilience is our ability to adapt to any stressors. So we want to build a resilient personality. We want to build resilience within our families so that we can manage changes, difficulties. So what I want you guys to do is take a deep breath. I want us to pause. You know, if you're walking around your home or wherever you are, I want you to take a moment for yourself. So we're going to take a deep breath, and I want you to breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. So when we're breathing, that changes our physiology. It can shake you up from where you were and take you somewhere else. You may need to calm yourself down. Breath work is very powerful. So we're going to do that one more time. So if you breathe in, this time we're going to do it for 4. So we're going to breathe in for 4. We're going to hold it for 4. And we're going to exhale for 4. So we're going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. We're going to hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. You can do that and change your whole physiology. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling anxious, sometimes you just need some mindfulness, some time to focus on your present instead of thinking about the past, instead of being anxious about the future. We can take some time in the present and take control of how we breathe. Breathing affects our feelings. So this top row is regular breathing. So your oxygen levels and your CO2 levels match. That's a balanced approach. We breathe in, we breathe out. We breathe in, we breathe out. The second row is exercise. So there's more oxygen coming in, more CO2 coming out, but it's still balanced because we're exerting ourselves. But for the example here, the last row is anxious breathing. So just think, if you're shocked, we often hold our breath. And that starts the change in physiology, where the level of oxygen and the level of CO2 are not balanced. What is coming in our body is physiologically not balanced. And so we're out of balance already. So want to empower you to breathe, do some breath work, to begin to bring down your emotions if you feel that they're creeping up or you feel a bit out of control. So a paradigm shift is kind of occurring in mental health, where we're looking away from the disease management and more towards creating well-being. So creating well-being shows the action to it. So there's action in creating. So wellness is an active and aware process in where we make choices of how we are building a fulfilling life. So it's no longer just managing the disease, like I don't want to be anxious or I don't want to be depressed. We're moving towards where we want to go. Because if you think about where you look is where you go. So we don't want to focus on it. We want to be aware of how we feel, but we don't want that to be the direction we take. So wellness is a dynamic process. So there's bits and pieces that we pull from our own personality. It won't be the same for every person because each person isn't the same. But building a wellness plan is important. So wellness is a journey. It's a process of searching for what tools work for you. And then you take those tools and you build and grow with them. And the path for everybody may be different. Some people may like to run. That may be their wellness path. Other people may want to meditate. Other people may want to talk to friends. So you're building your wellness plan. It's like building your toolbox. Things that you know help you stay in a positive way of thinking. So we have several initial simple steps that I usually start off with people, because people think about change as something big and something huge, and they get overwhelmed by it. But if we can start to take some simple steps in life, like building a morning routine, starting our day a certain way, instead of just getting up, brushing your teeth, go to the restroom, get your breakfast, like your rote movements, we can start our day with a strategy. And so we can build a morning routine, whether that's reading, whether that's exercise, whether that's drinking water, something that's building your morning routine, that you set the tone for your day. You're not waking up and reacting. The others are things like walking, doing a good deed for someone, healthy eating. Start to make that strategy. And it will start out small. You may say, hey, I can only do 10 jumping jacks. We don't have to think about exercise as this huge routine that I don't have time for. I don't know how to fit it in. Taking small steps. And I always describe it as like compounding money. When you have 1 penny, you double it, you have 2 pennies, not much. Double that, you have 4 pennies, still not much. But you continue to double a penny, and in a month, you have a huge amount of money. So we have to think about building a momentum and compounding. So start off small, being consistent with the small things leads to bigger things. So transitions, we're talking today about how to make a transition, a choice, moving from old life to new life. We're always evolving and growing, so we're always moving in a certain direction. If you're not moving, you're stagnant, things are not happening. So even if you don't move, you're still making a choice to stay still. So we want to make choices that take us in the direction we want to go. So your mind is the brain in action. So we've been talking about thinking, we've been talking about the mind. So the mind is the brain in action. So the brain is complex. It's a system. You know, it's like multiple ways. There's chemicals, there's structural changes, there's electrical changes that happen just when you think something. So I want you to understand, like, way you think affects your whole physiology. So we're going to talk about two scriptures that really talk about the mind. One is Philippians 4:8. So whatsoever things are true, noble, just, pure, lovely, good report. It's really, the scripture is guiding us on what to think on. So we say, what is it, praiseworthy? So when we're having our thoughts, we can put them through, filter them through that. Are my thoughts going in that direction? And if not, we can acknowledge where we are, and then we start to aim for a direction. We never want to just say, I'm going to be positive, I'm going to be positive, I'm going to be positive, because that doesn't work. That's that willpower that we'll talk about in a little bit. Really, it's acknowledging where you are and determining the steps that are going to take you where you want to go, leads to success. The other scripture is about being anxious for nothing, prayer, petition, thanksgiving. Those are steps: prayer, petition, thanksgiving. So it's like you have an experience and emotion, but where is it going to take you? It's given us steps to take us where we want to go. So do not be conformed to this world. We want to renew our mind. And so it says renew our minds day and night. So it'd be great twice a day for us to set that strategy of where we want to go, not necessarily all that's going on in the moment. So we start with the moment and we're taking it somewhere. So think on these things. We think 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day, but 90% of those thoughts are the same thought, day after day after day. Because our brain creates habits, creates routines to try to optimize its performance. And so that's why you can say, hey, I want to lose weight, and you have a good intention, but then it's the same thoughts leading you to the same actions. So we want to be able to move past that 90%. So we have the thoughts that lead to choices, that lead to behaviors, that lead to experiences, lead to emotions, and it goes around and around and around. So we want to create a vision, a direction, so then we can make a shift from those same thoughts. And we can create a plan that leads us to different thoughts. So if you think about driving a car, when you first started driving a car, you had to pay attention to every little thing, how much you put on the gas, turning your signals, and then eventually that dropped to your subconscious. And now you drive a car and you don't have to pay attention to all those little steps. That's those habits that the brain takes. So they're habits that we have in our life that have dropped to our subconscious, and we're just acting on them without even thinking about it. And so sometimes people will say, I have a quick temper. I don't want to push everybody away in my family, but I keep doing it. It's because of those automatic behaviors that before you know it, boom, boom, you've done something, and then you're like, why did I do that? So we have to work on those automatic patterns. So what we're talking about here is that conscious and subconscious. We talked about that willpower. That's 12% of our brain. 88% is that subconscious. So most of what's driving us are those patterns, those things that we gained in our life probably pretty early in our life. So if you have problems with money, oftentimes it may be from even growing up and seeing parents struggle with money, or seeing other people and their thoughts of money. So, you know, when we look at things, there are these underlying patterns that are impacting the mind. Those are our beliefs, those are our habits, and then the protections, those things that we automatically do to protect ourselves. Build walls around ourselves sometimes. When people we try not to feel vulnerable, we'll build a wall around ourselves, but we have to realize that we're holding ourselves in as much as we are keeping others out. So cognitive reframing, cognitive restructuring, cognitive refocusing, some people call it cognitive challenging. Those are all things that happen like in therapy, where the therapist will say, how do you think about something? And maybe challenge your way of thinking. So if you say, everybody hates me, do you know everybody? No. So that can't be true. So you're taking it to a reality so that you can actually work on it. So you could do that, and then following up, then you know how to speak and declare, you know how to pray, you know how to increase support, you know how to ask friends for help. You focus on gratitude. There are all these things that once you begin to make that shift in your cognitive thoughts and you know exactly what you are working on, then you can pull these things into place. And we're shifting from what we don't want to what we want. Looking at our perspective, anxiety and being excited feels the same physiologically. Our heart is racing, we feel maybe a little pit in our stomach, we're excited. Or are we anxious? It's the thought that we put and associate with that feeling that determines whether you go down the road of anxiety or excitement. Same with being relaxed or bored. Feels similar. Same with being hyperactive or energetic. These are different labels that we put on our feelings. But if we get more insight into where we want to go, then we can kind of control the labels that we're putting on how we feel. So how do you handle cognitive overload? What we talked about a little earlier. We first acknowledge how we feel. We don't want to push our thoughts away. We want to say, how do I feel about this? Because emotions are information. We want to understand that ups and downs are normal. It's about how we handle it, so we don't have to feel that there's something going on with us, that we need to ride that wave to ups and downs. We don't get to just stay up. We don't stay down. We establish a master routine like we talked about. We avoid distractions, and we prioritize ourselves, self-care, exercise, those simple steps that I was talking about. Thought patterns can affect the way we live each day. So suppose someone says, I consistently limit myself. Like I want to move forward, I want to do certain things, but I keep limiting myself. So you can think about it. Where did I learn these beliefs? Where did this come from? When did I have a shift in my belief system? Once you gather more information, then you have more control on where you want to go. So I want to talk to you about a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Because we're evolving, we're growing, we're going from our emotion to where we want to go. That's growth. Some of us were raised in a time where it was a fixed mindset, where they said, oh, you're smart, or you're dumb. You're overweight, or you're thin. And so we started to think, oh, I'm smart, I'm smart, I'm smart. I'm glad to be smart. But then when you had problems, you didn't know how to go from smart to the next place. Because your parents may have said, hey, you're smart. That's that fixed mindset. So you said that's when people started saying, hey, I'm good in math, but not in English. But to be honest, most of us can be good, grow, learn, and evolve. So we want to move more from that fixed mindset to the growth mindset. So that's what they teach kids today. Like, you can't do that yet. You know, if you say yet, it suggests it's coming, as opposed to putting you in certain categories. So we also want to have multiple variables. When we have our goals, we want to have multiple variables that we're measuring. So say we have a goal, we want to lose weight. If weight is the only thing that you're measuring, you're not likely to succeed, because that's one thing that changes slowly. And so you get frustrated in between seeing the result and the goal. But if we add other variables that we're measuring, so if you say, hey, I want to look at weight, but I also want to look at my mental health. I also want to look at, I'm getting increased energy. I'm also looking at physical performance. So then when one of those is not holding you up, the others are holding you up so that you increase your goals. So we want to take advantage of change. That's part of that growth process. So instead of us saying, I hate change, we're going to embrace change. So it increases our ability to adapt. It gives us personal growth, momentum, and creates opportunities. So we want to change our perception of change. So this is change theory. And in change theory, there are certain places that we come in change theory. So one might be pre-contemplation, where you're not even thinking of changing, but the doctor says, hey, you have to stop smoking. And you're like, oh, I didn't even think about smoking. So you're in that pre-contemplation stage. Or you could say, personally, I want to make this change. I want to learn a skill. Then that's contemplation. Then you make a decision. Then there's active change. There's maintenance. And then you may not always be perfect. So one of the things that this change theory is, it brings in relapse, or it brings in anything that is not lined up with what you want is part of the process. And so you keep going instead of feeling like it's a failure and you stop. So we have a thought, we're going to our goal, but then we have resistance, those little yeah buts, those thoughts that pull you back. I want to do this, but I don't have enough money for it. And then next thing you know, you're not doing it because of that resistance. So we want to manage those disruptors, those yeah buts. We want to manage those so that we can have an outcome that we want to have. So as we talked about before, emotions are information. So if we take it that way, instead of feeling overwhelmed by it, then we can say, when I feel angry, has there been an injustice? Do I need to pay attention to that? If I feel sad, has somebody done something to hurt my feelings? Then you can deal with that. If you break it down into it just being information, and then you choose how to respond after you're building more and more skills. So positivity. Positivity is a good thing. We want to be positive. We want to think on these things, but we want to make sure we're not minimizing. So sometimes people will say, I'm masking my feelings. I got to be positive, but they're really not positive in their heart. So sometimes people are suffering because someone dismisses that. Oh, you're okay, you're okay. You know, so then also feeling guilty. I shouldn't feel this way. Or minimizing someone else's. You're not supposed to be that way. We don't want to do that. We want to say, how do you feel? And then how do you get to where you want to go? We don't want it to be a positivity that's really not positivity. So your beliefs, how do you define yourself? We want to look at what we believe. Our thoughts lead to those beliefs. So we act consistent with how we believe. So I believe I am ... sends you on different trajectories. So we want to pay attention to those beliefs. So what do you believe in your head and your heart? And so I want it to be more than just logical. Like people will say, hey, I read the Bible, but I don't get the outcome. What's happening? So are you being intellectual? Are you being logical? So we want to believe so much that we act like it. Like if you really believe it, and it may take some time of you really meditating and understanding and trying something to get to that belief, that actual belief. Because we'll say, oh yeah, I believe that, but do you really believe it? So it's not just mere agreement. You can say, hey, I agree with that, but that's not believing. It's a deep sense or conviction that guides a person. That's what belief is. So we want to take it from our head, because initially that's what we'll hear, and take it to our heart. So we talked about memory and imagination, those things guiding us. We want to imagine where we're going, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I wanted to put something in here about fear, because fear can take you on a road you don't want to go on. And this is a quote from Dune, which it says, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. So you can have one small thing that you are fearful of, and it leads you totally where you don't want to go. So we have to remember, fear not. We have some skills that we can pull on. We look at a situation and we work to navigate it. You can look at this screen, and these are some impacts of fear: physical, memory, brain processing, mental health. You can take a look at those. We're moving beyond fear. We're working on stopping that overthinking. We're stopping those automatic negative thoughts, those patterns, those habits from before. We're creating a new future. We're looking towards where we want to go, that vision, and then we're learning to imagine. Because our brain doesn't know the difference between what's actually happening and what we're imagining. So if you spend some time imagining yourself going a certain place, your brain starts to think, okay, we're going a certain place. So imagining is powerful. So think about what happens if you don't change, if you don't evolve. Who's impacted in your life? You're definitely impacted, but sometimes it might be your children, your parents, your friends, your opportunities. So we want to learn how to evolve and change. So the power of imagination, just want to give you some hints before we end about imagining. If you look at these categories, you think about sight, you think about touch, you think about taste, smell. If you take the time to kind of pull that in to your imagination, you do a mental review and you do a repeat. So be unique, not average. You can be the best you can be. If we try to be someone else, guess what? We'll always be second, because they are them and we are us. So whatever our skills are, we take those and we build upon those and we become unique. And don't do it just because someone else is doing, because our culture sometimes will normalize dysfunction. So we know within our heart what our gifts are, and we build upon that. We become intentional about our connections, because remember, who we connect with and spending that time gives us neurotransmitters that impact our physiology and impacts our brains. We're increasing our creativity, and we're expanding our beliefs for the future. So I wanted to end with making sure, since we talked about suicide in the beginning, that we give some strategies to prevent suicide, because it's the despair that people may experience if they are not able to manage and build these coping skills. So we want to increase access to care, that people can actually see someone. We want to create protected environments, places where people can talk about what they're feeling. We want to teach coping skills, problem-solving skills, so when people have a challenge, they know how to handle it. We want to identify support networks and people who are at risk and help them. And we want to create safe connections. So on the screen here is the suicide lifeline. You can always call that number 24/7. There's a number for veterans that they can call 24/7. There's also a text line. So I want you to take a look at this, take a picture of the screen, keep these numbers, if not for you, for other people, so that no one feels that there's not a way out. So we transform our world by transforming ourselves. Again, I'm Dr. Gordon, Brilliance Behavioral Health. My information is on the screen. You can go to my website. There'll be some classes coming up as well to learn more about how to handle any stressors or mental health challenges, or if you just have questions. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Gordon. You are an amazing psychologist. No, really, you did a phenomenal job. I so appreciate you and love you so much. Thank you for offering your gifts and your talents to minister to the body of Christ. Look, Dr. Gordon, she just told you she has some workshops coming up. If I were you, And if I needed to be in those workshops, I would get in it. So make sure you take a picture of the screen and get her information, okay? Look, right now we are about to go to Dr. Ragland. Dr. Ragland is going to deal with anxiety in children. I mean, look, who else would we go to other than Dr. Ragland? She is a pediatrician, right? And she deals with children all the time. And so, Dr. Ragland, I thank you. You are an amazing woman. You are faithful here in our ministry, and I really appreciate you. So, look, let's go to Dr. Ragland at this time.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Dr. DeeDee. Again, my name is Dr. Yolanda Lewis-Ragland, and I am a pediatrician for Children's National Health Center. And this topic of mental health is so extremely timely and important, especially for our children and our adolescents at this time. So my topic today that I will be speaking on is mental health in children and adolescents. In the COVID-19 pandemic, the mental health for our children and our adolescents increased significantly. In fact, there was a report done by the World Health Organization that stated that in the first year of the pandemic, in just 2020, we saw global rates of anxiety increase by upwards of 25%. This is so near and dear to my heart, because the report also stated that mental health disorders for our children and our adolescents are often accompanied by suicidal ideations as well as self-harming behaviors. The mental health for adults during this time frame also increased significantly. In fact, the report stated that in the first year, in the early months of the first year in 2020, depression in adults tripled and went from 8.5% to a whopping 27.8%. Not only did it triple in that first year, or the first months of the first year, but it continued to rise and increase. In fact, the report stated that in 2021, depression worsened, and it climbed to 32.8%, which means, if we think about it, depression for adults affected 1 in every 3 American adults during 2021 of the pandemic. So mental health in our children, however, is something that I'd like to highlight, because often we look at studies and we get this information and we're focusing on the adults. And this is extremely fine and important, but our children are often left out. So globally, this report established that 1 in 7 of our 10 to 19-year-olds experience mental health conditions. That's upwards of 14% of the population. These children remain largely unrecognized, however, and they also go untreated. So anxiety disorders in children and in adolescents can be a little bit different than we see them in adults. Obviously for adolescents, it's a little bit closer to adults, but for children, it can present quite differently. 1 out of 8 adolescents meets the clinical criteria for what we call an anxiety disorder. Now, there are different types of anxiety disorders. There's the generalized anxiety disorder. This is someone who has anxiety about just about any and everything that's happening in their life, and we recognize them pretty easily. But then we have a social anxiety disorder. These are individuals who only feel anxious when they're around crowds of people. And then lastly, we have panic disorders. Now, panic disorder is a little bit different because this individual has physical symptoms that are often recognized or misconstrued as physical ailments, like heart palpitations, sweating. They think they're having a heart attack. They think they're suffocating. And so we have to actually diagnose them differently But again, those are the 3 types of anxiety disorders that we often see in adolescents. When it comes to children, if we're concerned about anxiety in children, and then I say children, I mean younger children, that differentiates them from adolescents. A child with anxiety is someone that we might see that has not outgrown sort of the normal anxiety. Things like separation anxiety. A child who, when they're taken from their parent, a parent who drops them off at the daycare or drops them off with a friend or a family member, and the child is agitated, at least in the beginning, but once the parent leaves, they're easily soothed. They can do self-soothing, or you can calm them down with a stuffed animal or a TV show. That's the normal separation anxiety. However, the kids who do not outgrow that, they're at an age where they're much further along, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they're still having this over-exaggerated anxiety when they're away from parents or family. That's a child you might want to be concerned about having an actual anxiety disorder. When there are so many fears that this child actually has an interference with at school or home or with play, this is a child that we're concerned for an actual anxiety disorder. When we talk about anxiety disorders, there are several examples. So the first one I mentioned was separation anxiety. Again, this is a child who just being away from family, away from friends, away from their normal environment, they're a little agitated. That's normal, and children tend to outgrow that around 18 months of age. But you may have children who have a specific fear of something, like going to the doctor. They're afraid of dogs. They might be afraid of insects. This type of anxiety is also normal, and it's called a phobia. This isn't just children. Most of you know, as adults, many of us have phobias as well. Some of the common phobias in adults are phobias of height, and again, phobias of animals and insects. This is normal. Then we have what I explained earlier was a social anxiety. Someone who's very particular about being around crowds. This has increased since the pandemic because many of us were socially isolating, and so many introverts and people who had social anxiety got very comfortable being away from school friends, being away from crowds. And now that the pandemic has begun to lighten up some, and some of the rules have been softened and taken away, they're starting to show even more anxiety because they're expected to matriculate back into society and matriculate back into school. And so there are very many of our teens and our children that are having a very hard time with this. And those are the children and adolescents with social anxiety. Then again, there's this generalized anxiety. This is someone who's afraid of just about anything and everything. They're afraid that something bad is going to happen in the future. They're constantly worried. And this is not a normal anxiety. And this is a child or an adolescent that you definitely want to be evaluated. The last one is the panic disorder. And I explained it earlier, but I'll say this again. This is someone who has repeated episodes, and it's intense and unexpected, but it's heart palpitations. They might break out into a sweat. They feel that they can't catch their breath. They might feel dizzy, shaking, sweaty palms, things like that. So this is a part of something we call a panic disorder. And again, just like a generalized anxiety, this is not normal, and this is something that you definitely want to have evaluated. Anxiety symptoms in children can vary. It goes from someone who just feels a little worried, maybe they have fear here or there, they might be irritable, or a child who seems angry all the time. They're angry about everything. They're kicking people, they're kicking things, they're kicking objects. This isn't just bad behavior. For some children, this is how they're expressing their anxiety. There's a child who goes the opposite direction, who's fatigued, who's very tired. Then there's somatic feelings like a headache or stomach ache. They don't really know how to express what they're feeling, so they tend to have these very mild symptoms. The problem is there's also this group of children who just don't express what they're feeling at all, and they keep their feelings to themselves. These are the children that often go unnoticed, or their symptoms and signs can be missed. When it comes to depression in children, similarly to some adults, the symptoms can be occasional. They might feel a little sad, a little helpless. They can't really fix a situation. They can't fix their friendships. They can't fix a broken toy. This stuff is normal. But it's the kid who's feeling sad and hopeless all the time, or about just about everything and in any situation, that you're concerned about. It's those persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness that we're worried about. And this might render, or at least you might suspect, a diagnosis of depression. When we are looking at the symptoms for depression in children, this hopelessness could be also an irritability, just not comfortable. They don't have fun with the things that usually make them happy, like they don't enjoy playing with their toys, story time, they're not interested, their favorite television show, things like that, no longer interest them. This is very concerning for a child. Also, some of the changes that you might see is a change in their eating patterns, and it can go either way. Some children that are depressed won't eat at all. They're not very interested in eating. You can't get them to eat a full meal, not even their favorite things to eat. On the other hand, you have a child who will overeat. They're overcompensating, they're overindulging themselves, and they're really trying to get over the sadness. And so what they're finding is maybe the sugary foods, the snacks, they're trying to find comfort in these foods. Obviously they can't, but you're gonna see that they're overeating. This is also a child you wanna be concerned about, especially an intense weight gain in a very short amount of time. This is a child who might be expressing depression. We just haven't figured it out yet. We also wanna look at their sleeping patterns. Again, just like eating, it can go either way. You have a child who doesn't sleep very much, who has insomnia. They may even have nightmares. And they can have dreams that are nice dreams, but they just interrupt their sleep. Then you have the child who, because of their depression, they're sleeping way too much. They're sleeping on weekends. They're sleeping, you can't wake them up for school. They're not even interested in going to school. They'd rather go to sleep than go to, say, soccer practice or go out and play with their friends. This is something that you should be very concerned about. You should have a very low tolerance for, and you definitely want to get these children evaluated. You also want to look at energy levels. Energy levels, again, just like eating habits and sleeping habits, can go either way. You have a child who is extremely tired. They just don't have any energy. They're just not interested in anything. They can even come across as lazy and get labeled as such, but really they're just dealing with their depression in a different way. Then you have the child who is overly active all of a sudden. So they seemed fine maybe before the pandemic, but during this pandemic they seem to have this pent up energy and they just couldn't express it. That pent up energy comes out as anger. They're often clumsy, they're breaking things, they don't mean to, they're apologetic in the end, but it just doesn't correct the behavior. This is something that parents should also be concerned about. You have kids who just have a hard time when they're paying attention. You're talking to them, you're asking them to do stuff. They can't remember 2 or 3 command steps. You tell a child to pick up their shirt, put it in the hamper, and then wash their hands. And they'll come back to you, and they may have to ask What is it that you said? They may remember one of the commands, but they don't remember the others. This is also a child who is starting to show signs and symptoms of what might be early depression, or even a severe depression, but they're having a hard time not just paying attention at home. This is a child who all of a sudden, they seem to have school failure. This is a kid who prior to a situation, I'm gonna still keep talking about the pandemic because that's something we just came through, but any situation that was concerning. It might be that you had a family member who died suddenly. You might have had to move from a home that they were really in love with, and you had to downsize. There's all kinds of reasons that kids get depressed that they just don't know how to express it. But this is a child who was doing very well in school. The teachers can tell you that they were very engaged, and all of a sudden, because they can't pay attention in the classroom, just like they can't follow the commands at home, they're starting to express school failure. And again, this is suddenly. This isn't a kid who had been struggling with school previously. This is an all of a sudden, they can't remember their assignments. They're not taking their assignments to school. They had the assignment in the bag, but they forgot to turn it in. This is a child that we definitely want to evaluate. Then we have the kids who feel just worthless. And hopeless again. They feel as if nothing that they do really counts, nothing that they do matters. Their voices aren't heard, and they tend to become very introverted. And again, this may be a kid who was not an introvert prior to something happening that triggered this depression in their lives. But what's the most dangerous about the behaviors of a child who is depressed is the self-injury children, those who begin to harm themselves. Sometimes they're just destructive. Their behavior is destructive. They, sometimes will even say things like, I wish I didn't live here. I wish I didn't have to be here anymore. And they're either breaking things and I say a lot of times breaking things, but they're breaking things onto themselves. This is something that I've seen a lot in children and in patients who will take pencils, they'll break the pencils and then they'll try to hurt themselves with the pencils. And it's very dangerous. Or a child who tries to break the window or hit the wall with their hand. Again, they're trying to feel this pain and feel the void that they're having, and because they don't have the words, they just don't know what to do about it. Then we have the children who we're not quite sure if they're depressed, and so what would we do? What would you do if you're concerned about a child? Well, the first thing is you want to make sure that when you talk to a child that they're not expressing thoughts or even have a plan for suicide. This is a kid who all of a sudden they're interested in the medications that you are on or their grandparents are on. They're starting to accumulate medications, so medications like Tylenol, Motrin, just your regular daily, everyday medications in the home, you might find them disappearing. This is one case that I had of a 7-year-old who tried to commit suicide, who began to collect Tylenol, Motrin, all kinds of pain medicines, and she wasn't just collecting them from her house. Every time she went to see family and friends with her parents, she'd ask to be excused to the bathroom, and she started collecting these pills, and she attempted suicide and took, I think, upwards of 45 Tylenol. In fact, it was a mixture of Tylenol, Motrin, and drank a couple of the bottles of such. This is a kid who we had to, pump her stomach and get her some counseling. But again, any thoughts of or attempts or plans, or if you find a letter, kids will often write down how they're feeling. That they don't like what's going on in their lives, they don't like their teacher, their friends don't like them. These are kids, and again, I'm not suggesting that you go through anyone's things, but we also have to recognize that as parents, it is our responsibility to be keenly aware of what's going on with our children. So journaling and leaving notes around, sometimes they want you to find these things and they want you to intervene. And so I recommend that you try to do so. Depression may cause a child to just make trouble again, or just not be very active or seem like they're interested. And so often they're mislabeled as troublemakers. And so again, these are the kids that if they were not a troublemaker before and all of a sudden this is what's happening in their lives and this is what their teachers are expressing or their coaches are expressing, then as a parent, I think you look at that and you advocate for your child and recognize that my child wasn't like this before. Maybe something has happened and maybe we need to have this child evaluated. Again, my biggest fear is that some children don't talk about these things at all. Some children they are riding low under the radar and nobody notices that they've become an introvert, that they no longer, increase, or that they no longer are active in family discussions. They're no longer interested in drawing in their books or coloring. They're just no longer the kid that used to have the spark, that used to make you laugh, that used to like to laugh. These are the kids that get unnoticed. And these are the kids that oftentimes they don't just attempt they don't attempt suicide or to harm themselves. They're often the ones that are most successful. So you definitely want to pay attention to the kid who is extremely quiet and just may not appear to have anything wrong other than they're just not themselves. When it comes to anxiety and depression, there are some copycats. So everything that we talked about here isn't all just depression. Sometimes there's a kid who experienced real trauma in their lives, some kind of real stress. And so their reaction to that trauma or to that stress, although it's an exaggerated reaction, it's still a normal reaction. So again, losing someone that is very dramatic, that happens all of a sudden, these are ways that a normal person or a normal child might react. They might sleep a little bit more. They might be uninterested in eating. They might not be excited about school. But we can probably get them through that because, again, this is a traumatic situation that has taken place. And once they get through that trauma, we can probably normalize them. There's other things like just having a hard time focusing and being fidgety, and that kid that just won't sit down. That might be a kid who's experiencing ADHD or some other type of behavioral disorder. So all things are not anxiety and depression, and I don't want people to assume as such, but I do want you to understand that any behavioral changes in a child or an adolescent that seem peculiar to you as a family member or a caretaker is probably something we want to have evaluated. So, for mental health treatment, what do? Well, one of the first steps is exactly what I said. We want to have that child evaluated, whether that's with their primary care physician or a mental health specialist. If they're at school, whether that's a school counselor, maybe there's just an IEP that needs to be done. And this is a kid who's just having a problem with understanding the school materials. They're all of a sudden having a problem with reading and math, and their way of sort of detracting from that and distracting others is by acting out. So this is not uncommon for children. So there may just be need to be an evaluation done by the school, by the counselors, but you definitely want to call attention to someone so that we can have this child evaluated. It may be something as simple as this child now needs glasses and they can't see the board. And so instead of saying they can't see it and they don't understand it, they'd rather act out. The American Academy of the American Academy of Adolescent Medicine, Psychiatry, they recommend that there be a routine screening of behavioral health and mental health of our children on every well visit. And that is something that we as pediatricians are very active in doing. And there are these developmental screens that should pick up on any child who's having a major change either in personality or a major change in how they're expressing themselves and their behavior. When it comes to mental health treatment, there are other things that can be done too that are vitally important. One of the things that you all know about me is I'm often talking about a healthy lifestyle and about eating good foods like fruits and vegetables and good nutrition. Well, it turns out that this is also extremely important for mental health and mental clarity. And so a kid who's having a hard time with distraction and concentration isn't a kid who needs to be eating a lot of simple sugars, sugary cereals, sodas, and candy. This is a kid who you should be supporting them with a healthy diet of fruits and vegetables, multivitamins, fibers, and good grains, legumes, things like beans and lentils. So there's a lot of things that can be done. You also want to introduce them to some other healthy behaviors, right? So outside of eating well and maybe having a good eating plan, there are some mindfulness activities that these kids can participate in. One of the things I'm very verbose about and something that I often encourage is things like meditation, breathing exercises, and we do meditation with kids as young as 10 years of age. In fact, we start breathing exercises with children as young as 5 years of age. So no child is too young to be taught about mindfulness, to be taught how to center themselves, how to become aware of their emotions and actually start to train and control their emotions. This is extremely important, not just in children and adolescents, but obviously in adults. When we talk about the emotional quotient of an adult, when we talk about how you really manage your emotions, these are some of the things that you can learn as early as 5 and 10 years of age. But the big thing too is to know about prevention. Because what we've found is that many kids who have a trauma or a stress in their lives that are exhibiting this depression or anxiety, they're actually experiencing some things in their home, maybe abuse, physical or sexual abuse. Those kids that tend to be bullied at school, they're the ones that have more depression, more anxiety. Anytime that you see a child who just experienced disaster, someone who had to be displaced from their home because of a hurricane or a war zone, right? We have these kids that are being ripped out of Ukraine right now because of that disaster. So any of those situations are gonna cause mental health distress in a child. And so one of the ways that we can help children in these situations, children and adolescents, is to be about the prevention of those things, understanding bullying prevention techniques and tactics, know how to recognize if a child is being bullied and know what to do if they are, knowing and learning how to recognize physical or sexual abuse in a child. Is it something that you need to report? As a physician, I'm a mandated reporter. We know that this is the same for teachers, some educators, coaches. There are things that we have to be aware of if a child is experiencing or if we just suspect that a child is experiencing something. But that doesn't take away from your obligation as a neighbor or a friend or someone who sees a child regularly. If you think that something's going on with a child, if you think that that child might be experiencing something and you can be of help, it might be a situation that you have to just pray about it and think, was this something that I should make authorities aware of, or at least I should make a parent aware of? So these are the things that often we can do to get involved when it comes to prevention, because they often are attached to the mental health and the mental health and wellness of our children and adolescents. So, who should be evaluated? Again, and this is really just a recap, for a young child who maybe has frequent tantrums, who hasn't outgrown that anxiety of separation from a parent past the age of, say, 2 or 3. So this is a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old who seems to be highly agitated when people in their lives leave a room or leave them somewhere with a trusted individual like a teacher or the daycare or something, a family member. That might be someone who needs to be evaluated. There's also the kid who complains of the frequent headache and frequent stomach aches, but there doesn't seem to be anything particularly wrong with them. It's not the foods that they're eating, there's no particular pattern. So this might be a kid who needs to be evaluated. We might be concerned about a child, again, who always expresses being fearful that something's gonna happen. There's some danger around the corner, and they're constantly talking. They're just really constantly worried, and they just have this sort of sense of doom. This is a child who might need to be evaluated. You also want to evaluate a child who's in constant motion, always fidgety, can't sit down, can't seem to control their behavior, or even if that behavior is destructive. And then conversely, a child who is very fatigued, who's not interested in anything, who's not interested in their favorite toys anymore, their favorite video, their favorite games. You also are gonna need to probably have a child evaluated who has a sudden academic loss, right? All of a sudden they're struggling in school. All of a sudden they can't remember things in school. They don't turn in their assignments. They just won't participate. This is a kid we might be interested in. And then lastly, you might want to check on a kid who, again, just repeated actions. This is almost like an OCD kid who constantly checking if the door is locked. They're constantly checking if their shoes are you know, the right size, they're matching. They seem to have very odd behaviors, and it's this constant checking behind themselves that makes it really odd. Because again, this isn't a normal worry for a child. If an adolescent needs to be evaluated, this might be an adolescent who, again, they've lost interest in the things they're interested in. They don't want to see their friends. They don't want to hang out. Now, I'm real concerned about my child if she doesn't want to go to the mall, if she doesn't want to spend any money. So there's some things that you already know that your child likes to do. But if all of a sudden they lose complete interest in those things, then there might be something that you need to think about having them evaluated for. You know, a kid who has low energy. This is a tough one because teens do go through growth spurts. And some teens will sleep a long time, upwards of 8 to 10 to 12 hours because they really are growing at that time. So we have to be careful thinking low energy versus a kid who's sort of going through a growth spurt. But a low energy kid is just never awake. They're always asleep. They're asleep in school. The school is complaining that they're sleeping through classes. They get home. They go right to bed. They could sleep through the entire day. They might get up, maybe grab something to eat, and then they're headed right back to their room. The other part is they're isolating themselves. They're not around family members. They're not around their friends. They don't play video games. They don't play the things that they usually play and like to do. This is a teen that I'm particularly concerned about. There's also the teen who, again, has self-harming behaviors. When it comes to teens, some of the common self-harming behaviors are things like cutting. They may cut themselves. You gotta be careful because they often cut themselves in places most people won't see. So they're gonna cut themselves like under their arms because when you're looking or talking to them, you can't see that. They might cut themselves under their arms. So they're cutting themselves in places that often we will see as a physician when we do a physical, but it's not a place that the average person will see. They may cut themselves just up until a certain point, and then they'll wear a short sleeve shirt or a long sleeve shirt so that you can't see the cutting. But the other things they like to do is burn themselves. a kid who doesn't have any habits, they're not a smoker, you've never seen them smoke, they often carry a lighter. And oftentimes they're actually burning themselves. And I've had conversations with some of these teens, and they say it's the only time that they actually feel anything. They're waiting to feel something. That's how depressed they are. So the cutting makes them feel, even the pain makes them feel more alive than what the depression makes them feel, or the pain from the fire, from the flame, often also makes them feel more alive than the depression tends to make them feel. And so these are very sad conversations that we tend to have, but those are the self-harming behaviors that you see maybe in an adolescent. You may again see a kid who just has really destructive behavior, and I mean further than the cutting and burning, but a kid who drives, you always find out they've been in an accident of some sort. They've totaled their car, if they have a car. They are just very likely to get into a fight because they don't really care. They pick fights often. And they just, again, if you talk to them about it, they don't really care what happens to them. They tend to sort of talk about death and talk about wanting to die. And again, this is something we call a suicidal ideation. They're often almost obsessed with the idea of not being here anymore and of dying. And so that's really dangerous. And then again, there's the kid who has the elevated energy. This is something we've talked about. You may have heard the word manic. They are all over the place. This energy comes out of nowhere. You don't really understand why they seem so excited or, talking really fast, really pressured. But sometimes the speech that you hear doesn't really make sense. It's not that the words don't make sense, but maybe what they're talking about just doesn't seem to make sense. So they might be having a manic episode. And so you have manic and mania, which is the really hyper, over-exaggerated happiness. And then you have depression. So many times those adolescents are going through something that we call bipolar. It's a manic and depressive stage that they go through. The other one is they might be involved in some substances like alcohol, smoking, use of drugs. And a lot of times they're using or participating in these substances to dull the pain of the depression. But some of them are actually going further than that, and they're attempting suicide. They're attempting to drink themselves into death or overdose on drugs when it comes to pills and other substances. But again, lastly, there are those kids who may feel like they're hearing someone. They may tell you that someone's trying to control their thoughts. They're hearing things. That's another type of disorder that's connected to something we call schizophrenia, but this is somebody who needs to be evaluated. They may not seem depressed or have anxiety, but they're starting to tell you that they're hearing someone sort of tell them to do things. And the reason this is important to know is because adolescence is one of the first times that you see signs and symptoms of something that we call schizophrenia. And it can be often sort of mashed into all of these other behaviors that an adolescent or a teen is exhibiting. And so it can be sort of ignored, but you don't want to ignore that. So again, those are the things that we want to know about a child or an adolescent who may need to be evaluated. So what is it that you can do? What resources are there out there? How can you find out if your child or your teen or someone you know that has a child or teen that you're concerned about might need to be evaluated? Well, there's a lot of information about these things. There's a lot of handouts that are available online. And so there are a few organizations that I think that you should be aware of. The first one is the National Institute of Mental Health. They have a website, and then they also have clickable links that will give you, again, very helpful handouts that will let you evaluate yourself or your child or teen and let you know if there's something that you should be concerned about. Then there's the group that we call SAMHSA. That stands for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. They also have a lot of resources, and they have a website. And you can go on that website and you can find ways to either evaluate yourself, evaluate your child, or evaluate your adolescent and see if there are some things that you might be concerned about that need to be addressed by either their primary care physician or a mental health specialist. Then we have the National Alliance to Advance Adolescent Health. That is not just for mental health, but also for physical health, but they have a lot of information and a lot of resources, and they have a website as well. And lastly, there's the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And again, lots of resources there. They have a website, they have handouts, and there's all kinds of phone numbers, hotline numbers. I want you to know that teens, again, our teens and our children are more at risk today than they have been at any time for suicide and suicidal ideations. So please, get your hotline numbers, have them available, put them on your refrigerators, put them near your office, put them in your purse, put them in the car, wherever you need to have them, because you just do not know sometimes what a child or an adolescent is thinking, because often they will keep those thoughts, those feelings to themselves. And so it's time for us to pay attention, and it's time for us to get involved, because again, mental health disorders are on the rise for both adults, children, and our adolescents. Thank you.
Wow, I told you Dr. Ragland is amazing. She's so well versed as far as the word is concerned and science. Thank you, Dr. Ragland. I am about to present to you a panel of amazing teenagers. They are going to present, some information to you that really kind of just took me back. I am so impressed with them. They did an awesome job, really. If you have a teenager, I would encourage you to invite them in the room now, because they are going to share some things that are pretty amazing, that will bless their lives, that can really help them deal with whatever they may be dealing with right now. This is a pre-recorded panel that I facilitated. I wanted to tell you that because I'm not sitting right there with them right now. You see me right here, which is, now, and that is going to be different. And so I wanted to be able to tell you that is a pre-recorded panel that we did, but they did a phenomenal job, right? So after this video, I present to you my panel of amazing teenagers.
You know better than anyone how your child's life has been impacted by COVID-19. And although kids are remarkably resilient, many are struggling to adjust to the changes. This is only natural. The routines that once gave them a sense of control have been erased. Their classrooms have become computer screens, their friendships put on pause. It's understandable they might feel irritable, frustrated, or sad sometimes. Loneliness, confusion, and anxiety are also common. But as a parent, how do you know if your child's emotions are a normal reaction to an abnormal situation? Or if what you're seeing are signs of more significant mental health challenges? At the Society of Clinical Child and Adolescent Psychology, we have tips and resources to help you identify and address your child's mental health needs, including free, confidential mental health assessments and information about how to find professional help. If you're concerned your child is experiencing severe sadness, anger, or maybe even depression, ask yourself these questions. Is your child no longer interested in doing things they once enjoyed? Have their eating and sleeping habits changed? Are they having trouble finishing tasks they used to find easy? Have they talked about wishing they were no longer alive? Changes such as these could be signs your child needs help from an adolescent mental health professional. During the coronavirus pandemic, many mental health professionals are offering online support. This means safe, convenient treatment options are available regardless of where you live. For more information about the symptoms of childhood depression and to find out what kind of help is available, visit effectivechildtherapy.org.
Well, hello. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on today. I'm so excited to be connected to a ministry of, such a caliber that will allow us to minister to the souls of man. You know, I thank God for Pastor Mike that he is not threatened by us sharing anything about mental health, but he has allowed us this platform so we can minister to the partners and to all of those that are viewing today. So thank you so much. Right now, you have just entered into the Teens Corner. You have heard some amazing psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, and therapists already. And you're gonna hear even more today, but right now, I have some amazing young people that are going to share with you some things that they have experienced and how to overcome it. You know, some of you have some teens right there in your homes. I would suggest to you that you call them right now and tell them, hey, look, we have a segment that has been created just for them. So at this time, I want to introduce you to our amazing panel. Turn up, y'all, turn up, hey. There we are. And so, yes, this is it, this is us, and we're just gonna share. We're gonna be very candid, authentic, and open. We have already communicated about some things, and they have a story. We all have a story, right? Yes. No one has to feel embarrassed or challenged because of what you have gone through, because you know what you have gone through is no different than what I've gone through and what so many of our viewers have gone through or are going through right now, right? And so thank you for being willing to be vulnerable enough so we can share and minister to the hearts of those. So at this time, what I would like for you to do, we're gonna just go on down the line. Introduce yourselves. Talk about how long you've been in the ministry. Say something real good about me, you know, I don't know. No, really, I want you to introduce yourselves and say hello to your parents.
Hey guys, hi family. My name is Naila Charles. Yes, I look like my mom if you know her, obviously. I'm 17 and I'm a freshman in college, and Dr. DeeDee's great. She was obviously in the spirit because she's wearing yellow. I have yellow on, so.
Yeah,
it's
you know, we're flowing, right?
Hi, I'm Shay. I've been in this ministry for 3.5 years now. I am 18 years old and I am a freshman in college as well.
Wow.
What's up? My name is Jeremy Wooten. I've been in this ministry my entire life. I'm a serious PK. Am I the best PK? Not at all, but I have been in this ministry for as long as I can remember. Yeah, that's me.
You were born here, right?
I was born here. This is my home. This is my place.
Hey, and so was I. I've been here my entire life. I've known Dr. D my entire life too. And you all know my mom too, Pastor Deborah, and you know, she made me a big deal about the House of Champs, chair. But I'm 16 and I'm in 10th.
Hey everybody, my name is Ariana. I am 16 years old. I am a sophomore in high school, and yeah.
This is cool, and it's all right, you know? We just take a deep breath. We're gonna share, because what I would like to address first really is this whole pandemic. You know, a lot of us say it's an endemic, like it is over. We all know that it's not really over. You yourselves came in here as we were getting ready to go live with masks on, right? So we're still dealing with some of the effects that, you know, the pandemic has had on us, this whole coronavirus or whatever. You guys went through it. You were still in high school, right? This whole quarantine. You had to be isolated from, you know, your peers. You had to spend a lot of time at home with your parents. And I want you to talk to us about that. Like, what kind of challenges did you have? And then we'll come back and talk about how did you overcome them. Okay? Is that okay? So who wants to go first? You want to go? Go, baby.
When this pandemic first started, I was in 11th grade. I believe it was midway through the year. And I remember them saying, oh yeah, we guys are gonna go on spring break. And all I remember is never going back to school. And it kind of took a toll on me a little bit because it was my 11th grade year. I was getting ready for my senior year, and I had to adjust to being virtual. And that's not something I was comfortable with, but it became something that was more sufficient for me. And I liked it. I have no problem with it, but it did take a toll on me, and I'm pretty sure it took a toll on a lot of other people going into their senior year.
Right. So what do you mean when you say it took a toll on you? Did it affect you emotionally, mentally? Like, did you feel withdrawals, like you needed the contact, the touch of your peers? Were you challenging with the fact that here you are in the 11th grade? Everybody knows when you get to high school, this is a big deal, right? I mean, are you thinking, am I going to have a prom? Am I going to go to the 12th grade this way? You know, like how? What do you mean it had some kind of?
So with me, I was ready to go to 12th grade. I was ready to just graduate, get it over with. I am more so a hands-on learner. So when it took a toll on me, what I mean with that is it wasn't different, but it was also different that I wouldn't have teachers standing there helping me, doing some kinds of activities with me just for me to feel comfortable with my 12th grade year. And 12th grade year, sometimes it can be hard depending on the classes you take. And me personally, a lot of that kind of just didn't set right with me. But I got through it. It was pretty good. I had a lot of teachers and help from my staff at school, and I got through it.
That's good. How was your parents in that? Were they a good support system for you?
So my parents, they were at school, and I do have a younger brother that was home as well. So they were home most of the time. They helped me a little bit. Whenever I needed help, I would ask them. They would help out as much as they could, even though they've been out of school for a very long time. They still helped me out. I was also helping my brother as well since he was virtual. So I was doing my work and then helping him with his work as well.
That's cool. Okay. Who wants to go next? Jeremy?
Well, for me, I was coming right out of 11th grade. While I was in the middle of 11th grade year, it was a Friday. And like Shay, we were told we're going into spring break, and I wasn't prepared for that at all. I don't think anybody really was. It kind of just came out of the blue, threw everything off the rails, and just had everyone looking bewildered. There was college meet set up, and we were gonna go and see the schools, and I've never, ever been the academic guy. I'm not gonna say that no more, but I'm just not the books guy. But it kind of threw off everything. Homecoming, prom, the college visits, the extra time I needed at school to help me actually be where I want to be now. It kind of just adjusted everything,
Yeah,
and not in the best way.
Absolutely. So did you feel yourself feeling sad? You know, because a lot of times people will say, oh man, I just got so depressed, but we don't really define depression and sadness the right way, you know. Most of the time, most people are sad. They have never been clinically diagnosed as being depressed. And so I would like to know, like, how did you feel emotionally? Did it pull on you? Did you feel like, oh my God, I just gotta get out of this house. I feel like I am just going nuts. Let me tell you this, so this will give all of you an opportunity to think about, you know, your responses, but, you know, I think about me when I was growing up, right? How my parents almost made us feel like you're kids, you don't understand, you know, depression or being sad, get over it, kind of thing, right? And so then that isolates us and it causes us to go into some kind of withdrawal, you know, if you will, and we separate ourselves from the family unit, from our friends or whatever. And then we have to struggle and deal with our issues by ourselves. And at the same time, you know, we're crying out like, oh my God, can somebody just freaking talk to me? Can I say freaking in here? Right, okay. You know, but can somebody just talk to me? I'm having struggles, but at the same time, I don't know how to articulate that, right? I don't know what to say. I don't even know if what I'm feeling is proper or really, or is this real? Because my parents, again, you're young, you ain't got no problems. You just go to school, do what you're supposed to do, right?
You feel like it's unvalid, like your feelings don't matter.
Yeah, so talk to me. How did you handle the whole pandemic and being quarantined and away?
Well, like, I wasn't told that we were going on a spring break. We were told that we were going home for 2 weeks and then, you know, coming back, like everything's gonna be okay. Then we never came back. But it was really hard because, just like Shay, I'm a on-hands learner and stuff like that, and always need like more help than others and stuff. So it was hard doing online school and not being with my friends and stuff because I'm a social person.
So how did your grades, how were your grades? Like, were your grades affected? Really? No, this is... What'd your grades say, Shay?
Me personally, my grades were always okay. Like, I was the type of kid who got A's and B's and like some C's. And I always thought whenever I went virtual, my grades would drop because I needed that more hands-on. But it kind of helped me in my grades. I went my 12th grade year all 4 quarters with A's and B's, like straight A's and B's, probably like 1 or 2 B's. And it helped me a lot because I didn't have the distractions that I had at school.
Okay.
I was by myself. I just had to do
No,
what
this
I
is
did.
good because, like Jeremy, I mean, his response just now was like...
The opposite.
So it sounded like it was totally opposite of what, you know, you experienced. But before we go to Jeremy, I want to finish and give you that opportunity to share. So how were your grades? And because you had, it looks like you had some challenges too, Ariana.
Yeah, my grades were not good. I don't know how I passed.
So were your grades good before virtual learning?
They were definitely better before.
Okay.
I kind of was in a like I don't really care mode since I wasn't
See, this
really
is
getting
good.
help much. And yeah.
No, this is good because this is what I want to hear. You know, not necessarily that this has to happen or had to happen to everyone, but there are some people who don't have Shay's story, right?
Yeah.
But they do have yours. And you wonder how many parents were not supportive during that time and the child suffered even more because of the beat down.
Yeah.
You know, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You don't have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're in the house, do your work, right? So how did you feel being separated from even your friends?
That sucked. It really sucked because I always like hanging out with my friends, you know, doing things with them. So it's kind of like FaceTime was the thing, but it wasn't that same like, you know, connection and all that stuff. Even though my mom and dad took me out a lot, you know, get kind of active and stuff. And yeah.
Did you feel like they understood what was going on with you?
Yeah, I'm getting better at this, but I was the type of person where I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine, I'm good, I don't need help, I got this. But I really did it, and I kind of feel like I could take things on by myself, even though I know I couldn't, even though people were constantly asking me, like, I can help you out with that, like, I got your homework, I can help you. But I'm like, you know, you get it? Yeah.
Like you felt like you had it, but you didn't have it. You didn't have
I did
it.
it.
So how did you feel, like, emotionally? Like, did you feel yourself having down days, sad days, challenging days, like you just wanted to Like just throw something.
Yeah, I had a lot of those days. It was tough. It was really tough, cause I tend to bottle a lot of things up in and not really just ignore them. Like do things that are not good, to fill that void that I know only digging down to the root of what was going on with me could, help out and God as well. So, yeah.
Oh no, that's beautiful. Nia, you want to go?
Yes. So I was told the same thing Ariana was told. They told me that we was going to leave for 2 weeks, and then we just never came back. And it hit me hard because I was ready to go to 9th grade. That was my first year of high school. I wanted all the homecoming dances, do cheer, but I couldn't do any of that. And plus, we went virtual that whole year. They did hybrid at the end, but I didn't feel safe going. And it was just a lot. Like, I was still stressed about my grades because it's expected of me to maintain my 4.0. Like, ever since I got it in, 5th grade, they just kept expecting me to get it. So I just felt the need to just keep going. And some of my friends, I would try to help them out, too. They were stressed. Their parents were on them. They were doing bad. They just gave up. They would sleep while on the Zoom. But, I had a good experience with it because I kind of liked it. I could just do my work at my own pace without all the distractions in the classroom. But that's not how it was for everybody. But I was stressed by my grades, too.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like the pressure on you was to get the grades and not so much to care about you? Because sometimes we could do, it's like, I want this, but I can forget that this is involved. Bring me an A, I don't care how you feel.
Yeah.
Now, I know your mother and your parents are amazing, right? So I know that, but I just want to let's dive into that a little.
Yes, of course they were understanding because they knew the circumstances, but they still didn't expect anything less from me. They didn't expect that to change my mindset or anything. And I didn't expect it to change my mindset either because I pushed myself. So, of course, I still want to maintain good grades no matter what conditions we're in. But it was still, stressful. It took a toll on me a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So what do you mean stressful? How did it take a toll on you? What changed about Nia?
Well, because we were on Zoom and then, nobody really wanted to participate, unmute their mic, turn their cameras on. They was always on us about that. That's just different. It's easy in the class. I know the answer. I could just raise my hand and they're going to see that I know what I'm doing. But it wasn't like that. So it was still stressful to me to get that out so they could see that. But, I still did my work and stuff, but they don't know if I looked it up.
It's obvious because you maintain. I saw it online. Your mom posted, that you maintain your 4.0, which is amazing. Guys, don't you think that was amazing? That's really cool, right? So this is good. How important were your parents' role in supporting you through that?
It was important because they would always reward me and, give me advice and, always have talks about me, you have it, you need to maintain it, don't let anything distract you, keep pushing, you want to have a bright future. They always told me that, so that's just the mindset that I had. I didn't let any of the online, virtual, COVID, I didn't try not to let any of that get to me.
Awesome, I love it, All right.
So for me, I think I was in my sophomore year when COVID hit, and like Ariana and Nia, I wasn't told spring break. I was told 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, cool, 2 weeks at home, cool. But at the same time, I'm also a very hands-on person, but I don't like school at all. So it was like, whoa, I can stay home and be cool. But at the same time, I was suffering in my room because it's like, I need to be in school. So I was struggling and my grades definitely dropped. I was at the point of pretty much failing my sophomore year after almost failing my 9th grade year. So it was just like, it was that trauma running back in my head again. And I just stopped caring because at first at school, I was so hard on myself. My family was not hard on me, but they expected me to.
Expectations,
right,
absolutely.
So I got good grades, but then when COVID hit, I was in my room. It was just me and my laptop and my classmates who didn't participate. So it's just like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so there would be times where I would have class and I would wake up and be like, I'm not going to class. I'm not doing this. Like, I can't. Like, I literally cannot. Like, I would stay up till who knows what time, try to get up on Zoom, half awake, falling asleep. Like, it's just, it wasn't it for me. And like I said, school wasn't for me, or I didn't feel like it was for me at the time. So being virtual, it was too much.
It was too much because you already felt like you didn't like school anyway, right? So now they put you in a situation where you have to manage yourself. And I think that's what the biggest problem was for a lot of students, because when you're in the building, your teacher can say, hey, get your head off the desk, or you know, participate or whatever, give you some kind of instructions. But while you are virtual, it's like you have to manage yourself, because you can get up, go to the bathroom when you want to, you can turn your camera off, you can act like you're paying attention, and you could be playing your game and texting, you know, at the same time. So it was a big responsibility for, you know, everyone. I like what you said, because it made me think about what Pastor Mike has been teaching. Like you were talking about how, regardless of how you felt about school, you needed to be in the building, you know, because self-management was not good for you at home, right? And there are a lot of people, even not just here, but in the body of Christ, who have substituted coming together by staying home and self-managing themselves, you know, to be on a virtual platform, but they need to be in the building to have that connectivity, if you will, to have that synergy that we all give to one another. So it's very supportive. Like if you're in the building, me as a teacher would be able to identify if you're having struggles or having challenges. It's like, okay, I could pull you to the side, Anila, and say, hey, are you having challenges here? What's happening? Your countenance has changed. You don't seem as happy, you know, as you were before. So now the teacher, everybody was struggling, right? It was different and changed for all of our lives. But so I want to go back to you, Anila, and talk about like being home and being in that house, and then for you to make the decision, I just don't care. I'm not feeling it. Like, what did that turn out for you? You know, how did that pan out?
That's really interesting, because I cared about school because my parents were like, you know, school's important, like getting an education is important, but it's just the fact that I almost had a choice of choosing whether I went to school or not. And being in the house with all my family members, I have a huge family, so it's like everyone's in school, everyone's on the Wi-Fi, so it's like, okay, if Wi-Fi goes down, I don't really care, because, hey, I didn't want to be here anyways. So it's just the distractions of being alone and all the thoughts that were running through my head, like, do I really need school? Do I really want to go to college? But a year before, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do, and this is exactly what I need to do. So it was like, how did I almost lost myself in the fact that COVID hit, and I was like, nah, this is not for me anymore.
Wow. So you said you almost lost yourself. What does that mean?
Since I started not caring, I almost started not caring about everything. So it was just like, okay, school, I don't need to care about school. But then since I was staying up so late, it affected my health. So I didn't get the right amount of sleep to even focus on school. But then on top of that, I didn't have to really get ready for school either. So it's just like, I can wake up, brush my teeth, wash my face, and be cool. But when I was going to school, I'd get ready, like actually get ready. So it's just like, if I can roll out of bed and do this, it's like, do I really need to do this? Or am I doing this for my parents and my teachers just to see like, hey, I'm doing this, but still suffering alone in my room? And the funny thing is, my parents would ask me like, hey, are you good? How are your grades? And I'd be telling them like, yeah, I'm good. Like, I got this. Like, no, you don't have it. And there'll be days where I sit in my room and I just cry. And it's just like, why am I putting myself through this when there's help right outside of my door?
Yeah, this is so good, right? We're going to take a break in a moment, and we're going to come back and really kind of go into some other things, because I want to come back to you, Nyla, and talk about, you know, the emotional part, the thoughts that you had, and, you know, deal with those things. And then I'm going to allow you guys to just minister to our viewers and tell them, how did you overcome how you felt and what you dealt with? And before we go there, I want to share with you guys this book that I wrote. It's Not Too Big to Bow. I think this is an awesome parenting book. Of course, those of you that know me, we have 3 awesome, you know, adult children, but it hasn't always been that easy to, you know, like, raise them as well. Like, we've had some of these same types of challenges, and I wrote this book because here's talking about not too big to bow. It's like, I want parents to know that it's okay to come down, to be on your level, to minister to you where you are, opposed to standing up and trying to make you come up to where I am. It's like, if I could come down, right, and get in your world, I believe you'll be willing to hear from me more, right? Okay, so when we come back, we'll talk more about that.
I'm sad. I feel fat. I'm stressed. I feel ugly. I'm not hungry anymore. I'm so tired all the time. I'm just having a really hard time. And I don't know what to do anymore.
Welcome back to our final half, our second part of Teen's Corner. Do you know that teen suicide is the #2 cause of death, right? And it's so sad. And I think a lot of times that it goes unnoticed, that parents don't really get into their children's lives, if you will, their life, and identify certain things or changes that may be going on. And so what I wanted to do is to bring attention or to bring awareness, because this is mental health awareness. And I wanted to bring awareness to this so the enemy cannot continue to hold us captive to the things we do not know. The Bible says that God will not have us ignorant of the devil's devices. Well, if that's the case, then that simply means that we need to be proactive in getting information to expose the enemy before he can attack our young people. And that's what we're here doing today. So at this time, I would love to bring my panelists back up, and we'll go into, just some different things. I love you guys are doing an amazing job, for real. Thank you so much. Like, on behalf of all of the viewers, thank you for sharing your stories. Because sometimes you feel like a freak of nature, like I'm the only one going through this, right? Like nobody else understands this. Let me tell you this, when I was in probably the 6th grade, maybe 6th, 7th grade or something like that, I remember I had an encounter with my dad, and it messed me up so bad that I got all these pills out of the medicine cabinet, and I took them. But before I took them, I wrote everything down, and I put it on a piece of paper and put it up under the table. So I said, okay, because I'll be gone, they're gonna wanna know what happened to me, right? So I'm saying my mom would look and she'll pull that paper out and she'll see that I took all of these drugs. Like, what are you doing, DeeDee? Like, was it really that serious? When you look back, hindsight, no. But when you're in that moment, it's just that serious. Like, Ooh, it's just that serious. I think a lot of times, again, and especially in the body of Christ, we overlook so much stuff. And we think, I'll just pray for you. I'll just bind and loose and come in agreement. And I get that. I'm going to do all of that. But sometimes we need to go sit down and talk to someone and say, hey, this is a struggle for me. Can you help talk me off of this ledge because I am about to jump? I didn't have anyone to talk to, right? Well, I'll take that back. I had people to talk to, but I don't feel like it was given to me to talk to them. Like, again, it was like, you don't have any problems, you're okay. So here I am, young, taking a bunch of pills thinking, let me just go ahead and kill myself. And then I could be rid of all of them. Maybe I'm a problem, maybe I'm an issue. I don't feel good about myself, anyway, so. So it's pretty interesting, okay, but this is not about me, but I do want to bring attention to that because we have had even partners or partner that has been connected here who has committed suicide. And so my thing is, let's just talk about it, right? Why can't we talk about it? Why is it so taboo for us to deal with such intimate, dark, deep, demonic attacks that the enemy puts on many of us, if not all of us, to make us feel like we're not needed, or I'm not necessary, or like I'm not important, like you'll be okay without me, right? Like, is it okay to talk to someone? Like, when you were going through, any of you, when you were going through, did you feel like, they're not gonna understand? Talk to me.
I can definitely say that I didn't think my parents were gonna understand, because I was actually contemplating committing suicide back in like 2018. And so when the pandemic hit, it was just like even more of a, like, let me just go. And I didn't feel like anyone was gonna understand, because it's like, oh, I'm this Christian girl. Everyone should be, looking to me for the answers. I should be praying about it. I should be talking to God about it, talking to my parents. But it's like I shut them out. I was like, I don't need them. I just want to go. Like, it was such a, what's the word? Like, living out of emotion, which I shouldn't have done. Because when I tell you I was so close, to committing suicide, there was a time I was sitting in my bathroom floor, had a knife ready to just end it all. And it was just so hard for me to get out of that because what I felt in the moment was so real to me. But no one would ever know because I'm such a reserved person. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna keep this all inside. No one needs to know. I could walk out that bathroom and be smiling and no one would ever know I had a knife in there. And there was only a few people who could tell I was off. And when they found out, they were like, that's not you.
So did they find out or did you ever come out and open to them?
I think it was a mix of both because at first I didn't want to tell anyone. My best friend, who's actually on the panel, Jeremy, is literally the reason I'm still alive today because he saw that I was not myself. And he talked me down and he was just like, we got to do something about this. Because imagine if I was to go back in 2018, I wouldn't be here right now talking to someone who may be at home.
Come on, talk to them.
Maybe contemplating to commit suicide.
Like, look right into this camera right here now and talk to them right now.
Yeah, so it's real. It may feel really real to you right now, but I promise you, it's not worth it. You have purpose. You have divine purpose. God put you on this earth for a reason. And just like me sitting here talking to you right now, you could be supposed to be talking to someone else. Like, you have purpose. And I didn't understand that at the time. So I'm like, yeah, suicide is the thing. Let me just go. Like, I'm so tired of feeling all that I'm feeling. It's so overwhelming. And I bottled everything up because I was so reserved. And since I didn't talk to anybody, it was just me and my feelings and my mind. But you can't always listen to what your mind says because your mind is not always going to tell you the right thing.
Come on.
Unless you put the right thing in your mind, you're not going to. Don't listen to your mind. Don't. It's just not it.
No, this is powerful. You are so correct. You know, even thinking about Pastor Mike and how he is always teaching us about the mind, right? The power of our thoughts. And the enemy is such a coward, guys. What he does, he stands back off of us and he throws thoughts at us. And the only way he knows if we have taken that thought is by what we say and what we do. So when a thought comes, the Bible has given us real clear instructions on what? Casting those thoughts down, taking that thought captive, and not allowing that thought to rule and dictate our lives. And so it's so important, like you said, you know, you gotta make sure you're taking the right thought. You gotta make sure you're putting something in there so you know exactly what to think. And whenever the devil is telling you to do something contrary to what you know is right, regardless of how you feel, you know, I wish I had always known that. I didn't know that. I'm thinking what I feel is real. People that deal with anxiety, right? It's a real feeling to them. It's like an actuality to them. It's not like hypothetical. It's not like it's false. Like, I can't go to them and say, oh, that ain't real. In their minds, that's real. And so how do you minister to someone who feels like this is real? I love this, Jeremy. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm coming to you because, like, what did you say to her or what did you recognize?
I remember that I said to you that we're gonna choose happiness. We're gonna choose happiness. Then when COVID hit, we're gonna choose happiness because being cooped up in this room, stuck here with your thoughts, can be the best thing, but right now it ain't doing miracles and signs and wonders. It's doing the worst things. So I'm gonna wake up and I'm going to choose happiness. I'm going to choose to be happy. I'm going to choose to get out of bed. I don't want to go to school. I don't feel like doing it. I don't want to do my work. I don't want to do this test. I don't want to do this quiz. No matter how I feel, I'm going to choose happiness and choose the better days. And even though today is bad, tomorrow will be better. Because right now I may be going through it, but it's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get better for me.
Y'all got me so tore up on here, for real. I got so many different mixed emotions. It's like I feel like the proud mama sitting here listening to you guys, and then at the same time I'm feeling sad for some of those that may be, you know, experiencing some of the things that you're sharing right now. So just ignore the tears. I'm all right, for real. So, like, what did you notice in her? Because she said you identified something in her that was different. Was it her countenance? Was it like the sense of presentation when she would talk to you? Like, what was it? Because you're on Zoom.
Yeah.
And like she said, she could come out the room and nobody will ever even know, you know, that she's going through. So did she present authenticity to you?
I didn't know at first. It took time. I've known Nye probably the past 6, 7 years.
What do you call her, Nye?
Nye.
Okay, I want to say Nye. Can I say Nye? Okay.
I've known her for the past 6, 7 years. Privileged to know her. And it just seemed to switch one day.
Oh, no.
and-
Listen, this is what I want the parents to hear or friends to hear. Like, when you notice something, don't ignore it, right? Yeah. When you see a switch in somebody, we should be on it. Like, okay, what's going on with you? Yeah. You know, and not feel intimidated to ask or ashamed. I would rather you cuss me out. You know what I mean? Like, oh, mind your business. Tell me that, opposed to ignore something when it could have possibly have been something to save someone's life, right? Yeah. So you say it was all of the above.
All of the above. Nye is a primary person in my life. So when I saw her
she
switch,
is a what person?
Primary person. Like, I have my parents, I have my family. There's Nye. There's God.
Oh, so wait. So this is not just a best, this is like somebody you got interest in. So this has gone to another level right here for me.
At the time, this is my best friend. This is my best friend. This is somebody I truly, truly care about. So when I saw this like switch emotionally, physically, mentally.
How was she talking to you? How was she treating you? Was she irritated with you, not wanting to be bothered with you? Did she switch up on you?
Nye is very reserved. She's so reserved. But with me, she likes to talk. So when she was reserved with me,
okay, this is what
I knew there was a problem. I knew there was something wrong.
Did you think, oh, maybe she just don't like me right now, or she's not feeling me?
It could have been that.
I would have told him. I would have told him. I'm too blunt. I was like, nah, I don't like you. I would have told him.
Oh, you would have told him? Okay, so he knows that.
We would sit there in silence and nothing, and I would...
Hold your mic up.
I would be like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? What were we doing? And
I think it was hard to see that I was in this state of suffering because, like I said, I can put on this mask and like I look fine right now, but you would never know that I may be uncomfortable telling my story right now because I look so fine and I'm doing it with so much like
ease, right?
Like you would never know, and I put on that mask for so many years that it was just normal for me. So when my parents didn't know, it wasn't on them, it was on me. And I didn't want to admit that because I'm like, you are close to me, you should know me. And even with him, because he knew me so well, I still didn't want to tell him because it's like, you should be able to look at me and see something's wrong.
Something is wrong.
Whether I have a mask on or not, but now that I have overcome that, and even wrote a book out of it.
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm going to have you talk about your book in a moment. So hold that for a moment. I got you. We're going to talk about that book. So you said it was like, and you guys can jump in here too. She said it was like they should know me. You know, like I'm in the same house with you. Can't you see I'm going through? Why do I have to tell you? So do you think that's, like she said, no, it's not their fault, but how did you feel? Do you feel like, you know, or how do you feel? Like, do you think someone should just tell or they should just read your mind?
You go.
Okay.
You go first.
Well, I actually know somebody, he went to my middle school, he actually committed suicide, but you would never know looking at him. So it's like, I don't feel like they should be mind readers, but it's at the same time, like, it's not their fault. Like, when you look at him, like, I knew him, he was like always outgoing, always a smile on his face. But then, like, there was some points, like when you look back after he did it, it's like he kind of wasn't himself at some points. Like, you know, I wouldn't know, you know, probably check up on him every now and then, but it's like, I just didn't know.
So he should have reached out then. He should have took some ownership and said, hey, or is it okay? Because like social media, you guys are different. Like, I mean, Lord, y'all go through some stuff that we never even imagined. Like, we didn't have social media coming up. So the pressures are different. And people present, you know, this public, you know, facade. Yeah. That's the word I was thinking about, girl.
What you're supposed to be.
Yeah, you know, and it's so fake. It's so filtered. It's so edited, if you will. And it's hard to tell, like, are they really having challenges or they really look, I mean, they look happy and on top. Like, how do we, you know, decipher, like, all between all of that? So you were getting ready to say something when Nia was talking about that.
I feel like when it comes to you wanting or somebody else wanting to know if you're okay, I feel like a lot of us, or me, when I was going through my depression, I wanted certain people to know that I was okay and know that I was not okay, you know? But I feel like we have to kind of be open and vulnerable and be like, okay, other people are asking me that I'm okay. Maybe God put that person in my life to be like, hey,
that's good.
You need to talk to that person because that person has what you've been looking for. That person has what I need you to have right now in this moment, you know? And just like Naila, I had a lot of times where I was just done with life. Actually, 2 months ago, I was kind of getting over my depression, but I was having a lot of family issues, and I felt like I had to be the bigger person in things, and it took a toll on me. And I was on the verge of committing suicide, and it's been 4 times that I almost did stuff or was about to do something to end my life, but it was like somebody was standing next to me, you know, talking to me saying, don't do it, I love you, and that was God. And in those times, I feel like he was just putting me in this quiet space and kind of separating myself to really dig deep in me and want to know that you're not okay. And I need you to stop focusing on everybody else. I need you to stop focusing on what other people think about you or say about you, all that social media stuff. I want you to know what's inside of you.
Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I want you to do. Minister to them and let them know, the folk that are at home. You got some young people that are home that are watching. Like, how did you identify that was God for you? You know, like, he began to show you right? Just talk to them. What would you want to say to them if they came to you and told you they were dealing with, you know, some of the same emotions and feelings that you were dealing with?
That it's okay to not be okay. Like, it is okay to not be okay. I don't know how many times I would say it, but it is okay to not be okay. But
what is not okay is to stay not okay.
Definitely. It's not okay because you're going to literally drown yourself in your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings and continue to feel sorry for yourself. You're either going to wake up one day and feel like, okay, I'm going to feel sorry for myself and just talk about myself in a bad way, or you're going to feel some type of way and be like, I'm that girl, I'm that guy, I'm gonna do this for me. This is for me and me only. And God is gonna help you and God is gonna show you that it is okay. I have your back. By the end of the day, if nobody else has your back, your parents, your sister, God has you. God is going to get on that level that you thought you were never going to get on that level. He's going to get with you. Like he is. And
God's
it's okay.
gonna get with you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I need tissue. You guys are so amazing. So, you know, we have a few moments left. And Nye, before we go, I am going to give you an opportunity to share your book, and we're going to make sure, hopefully we're going to run and get them a copy of it so we can show it, so we can get them to buy, you know, your book. So talk to me about counseling. Have any of you ever gone to counseling, a therapist, or have shared with anybody outside of your parents? You have? Talk to me. Shay, talk to me a little bit.
This was last year, I believe, and the person I always went to was my grandmother. Like, my grandmother was my best friend. I grew up with my grandmother. I always stayed at my grandmother's house, and when she passed last year, it kind of took a toll on me, and that's what my mentality, it shot down. And after that, I still decided to contact some teachers, administrators from my school, because they were my support system. Sometimes I didn't want to talk to my parents because at times you don't think that your parents will understand what you're going through. Like you said, some parents like, oh, you're young, you're not going through that. But you are going through it, and parents don't understand that at times. And you might not seem like you want to talk to them. You might seem like you can't talk to them because they won't understand you truly. Even though they grew up with you, you grew up with them. But I talked to a few administrators from my school. They helped me out. I still talk to my sister, even though she doesn't live with us. I still talk to her a lot. I wish I could still talk to my grandmother, and I still do. Like, I know she's up there watching me. I still talk to her. I talk to my grandfather. I lost him a few days before my 10th grade year. So I talk to both of my grandparents. They are my rock. I love them.
That was a strength to you, right? All right, so you went to a therapist, a
Yes.
counselor.
I'm actually still in therapy.
You're still in
Yes,
therapy. That's
I am.
amazing. No, that's pretty hot.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I used to tell everybody about going to therapy, and I had never gone. And during COVID, I said, you know what? I am going to go and get me a therapist and really just deal with some things, deal with some issues, and talk out, you know, some challenges that I was having at the time. And a lot of people would look at me like, oh, Dr. DeeDee, you're awesome. You're amazing. You're a woman of faith. You don't have any challenges. But we all dealt with the same demon at the same time. Now, it did not take me out, thank God, you know, but it still was things that I had to deal with, you know, and I wanted to manage it properly or deal with it, handle it properly. And so I went and had some counseling, you know, as well. So, hey, I commend you. Really, it's awesome because, you know, a lot of times people think it's just about prayer or it's just about counseling. For me, I think the both should be integrated. And it's okay to lay on somebody's couch and let them talk to you, and then come to service and let your pastor, you know, teach you the word of God, knowing how to overcome and conquer in every area of our lives. And we're getting ready to close up in a second. And I'm gonna go back to Nye in a moment. I would like for all of you just to give one final thought. We're gonna do this really quick and wrap it up, and then, you know, we'll go. You wanna, since you're already in the mode, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything deep. One final thought that you may have, something that you didn't say that, you know, you wish somebody would have said to you.
Trust in timing. Timing is crucial, kind of, you know. Yeah, you just need to feel like you just need to wait on God and wait for Him, and it will come. Even though it may feel like this is never ending, I feel like this, He'll come. He will come through for you, okay?
God will come through for you. And the beauty of this really is He has already come through for you.
Yeah.
He has already delivered you. He has already healed you. I understand what she's saying. But faith is now. When you pray, I remember Pastor Mike, when you pray, Mark 11, when you pray, believe that you receive and you shall what? Have, right? So the moment you open up your mouth and begin to communicate with the Father, you got to be in faith, you got to believe that you receive it. Yeah. Thank you, girl.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Nia.
Okay, what I've been thinking about this whole time is purpose. Like, just remember you have a purpose and you need to stay alive to fulfill that purpose. My mom tells me all the time, like at church, sometimes like just seeing somebody smile like could just make your day, like just little stuff like that. Like you still need to be around for people, not even just yourself. Like you make people's day, like they could be going through the same thing as you, and then just seeing you, a hug, a little elbow, COVID and stuff, but it just makes their day. So you have a purpose.
That was good.
I'll say two things. First, for me personally, I would definitely say choose happiness. Choose happiness. I said this before. This world is stressful. This world is painful. This world has a lot of things going on, as we can see just by turning on the news for 5 seconds. Not even the news, swiping on Instagram. It's just the truth. But I would definitely say, Kiara shared as a song. It's called Something Has to Break. Something has to break. Don't let it be you. Trust in the Lord, and it will pass. You will make it through it, no matter what you're going through, no matter what it is, no matter what it may seem or feel like, it will pass. That you will get through it. And that's what I have to say.
Oh, I love that. Come on, Shay.
I would say keep pushing. No matter how hard it gets, just keep pushing. If you feel like no one has you, God always has you. He will always have your back. He will get you through anything that your life is pushing against you. Just keep trying. Don't give up, because once you give up, there's nothing that you can't get through yourself.
Oh, that's good. And now you got a book, and I've read some of your book. I was like, and that was the first time that I believed that you were having that challenge, because you sent it to me did you send me an email or inbox?
I think I mailed it to you.
You mailed it to me. Okay, you probably mailed it to me. I knew I had it. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh, I didn't know. Like, when? So share about your book. Encourage the people to purchase your book. And where can we get your book?
Okay, so I did write a book. It came out last year, around this time actually, and it's called Delivered by me. My mom actually published it, so shout out to you, Mom. And then my sister illustrated it, so just a whole family function going on. But it does talk about suicide, depression, anxiety. There's a little bit of sexual assault in there, but it's all my story. And you're not gonna know it any other way without reading my book. There's a lot of good stuff in here that you should know. Huh?
Yes, sir. That's it, right?
You can purchase it if you follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is flynai with 2 Y's _ NAI.
Can you guys type that on the screen? Spell it out.
FLYY _ NAI. So follow me on Instagram, and then the link is in my bio. So go purchase it, because you may need it and you may know someone else who needs it. So
absolutely. You was getting ready to say something?
It's good.
It's good. It's a good book.
So,
it is.
I didn't even read the whole thing, but I said something, I was like, girl, it's okay.
It is. That's how I felt. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is good, but at the same time, I was shocked, because you don't know everybody's story. But guys, thank you so much for being a part of our Teens Corner. They did an amazing job. Thanks to your parents for even allowing me to have this opportunity to sit with you guys. Please clap it up for them while you're at home, you're virtually viewing. Clap it up for my panelists. They are amazing. I told you guys we're gonna be blessed. Thank you so much. Please look at this number that's on the screen if you know or you have a child that may be dealing with some suicidal tendencies. please call the hotline to get them some help, or place this number in their room or something so they know that they can have someone that they can reach out to. A lot of times they are not informed to call for help. When my kids were growing up, one of the things that I would always ask, who is the person that you can talk to outside of me and your dad? A lot of parents are intimidated by that because they want to be the one that gives the instructions. Well, I don't care who gives the instructions. All I care about is that they get the right instructions, right? So God bless you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of Teen's Corner. Make sure you go and purchase Naya's book. All right, y'all want to say bye? Bye. I told you, them teenagers will make you cry, they make you laugh. I mean, all types of emotions that I was dealing with right then. But I thank God for their parents. Thank you, parents, for allowing them to be a part of our Mental Health Awareness Week. I mean, God, you guys have done a great job in raising them. Thank you so much, right? Okay, we are about to go to Terry McCall. Terry is going to share with you about what's in your cup. What are you dealing with? She's going to make you face some realities. What's in you that you keep ignoring? And then prayerfully, she's going to give you some principles that's going to cause you to want to deal with what's in your cup. Let's go to Terry McCall.
Thank you, Dr. DeeDee, for that wonderful introduction. Again, my name is Terry McCall, and I am the owner of Renewed Minds Therapy Services, and we provide mental health counseling to children, adults, couples, and adolescents. And today we're going to be talking about what's in your cup. I find myself having this discussion almost every day with my clients. What's in your cup? This determines how you see life, how you interpret what people are saying to you. It has a big impact on your relationship. So we're going to talk about that today. Now, we hear people talk all the time about what's in your cup. What exactly does it mean? Okay, people talk about you can't pour from an empty cup. They talk about how can I fill my cup? What's in my cup? You can't pour from an empty cup. We hear lots of discussion around this cup. But do we really talk about how it first got started, what drops are in it, how the drops got put in it? So we're going to talk about that today. So, what's in your cup? This is a nice, pretty cup here. How does anything get in it? Where does it start? So, let's see some things that might be in your cup. We have fear, compassion, hate, confidence, exasperation can be in your cup. Embarrassment can be in your cup. Thoughtfulness can also be in your cup. So lots of things can be in your cup. But let's talk about first, how did it get there? So the first drops are added while you're still in the womb. That's where it first starts. So the pregnant female communicates to her offspring cues about what life outside of the womb looks like. And the adaptation starts in there. So you learn how to navigate life based upon the hormones that your mom lets off while she's carrying you. So your first drop could be cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It alerts you that something is wrong, that there's some danger. And it also can cause premature births. And it gives cues about the environment to the fetus. So your baby is already learning what life is like on the outside based upon how you are handling situations. And I'm also a professional trauma professional, so we talk a lot about trauma and how trauma changes genes. So your genes are being changed based upon the amount of cortisol and epinephrine that you're getting while you're still in the womb. So when a pregnant woman experiences anxiety, her body produces chemicals that affect the baby too. The nervous system, for instance, stimulates the release of epinephrine, which is a stress hormone that constricts blood vessels and reduces oxygen to the uterus. So when you're going forward, things like hypertension, high blood pressure, your baby is predisposed to that just by the drops that are going into the body through the umbilical cord. So these stress hormones are some of the first drops that you get while you're in the womb. So that's the foundation of your cup. Okay? So let's start with filling your cup. So I'm going to first start off with an ideal situation. The ideal situation is the mom and dad, they plan for a baby, they're happy about the baby. A normal amount of stress is good. Like, will it be a boy, will it be a girl? How should I organize, how should I decorate the nursery? That's good stress, and that helps the baby. So then you get nice, good stress, good hormones in your cup from the beginning. And then once you're born, the parents love, you get love, you get joy, all poured in your cup. And then as you become an adult, you go out into the world with the full cup. It's as pretty on the outside as it is on the inside. You're full of good stuff that you can go out into the world with. And then other people can benefit from your overflow. You get married and you carry that cycle on to your child. That's the ideal situation. Unfortunately, not everybody experiences that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What happens when you don't have the ideal situation? So, you see this picture here demonstrates a child that's being scolded. That child might be learning shame. That child might be getting shame, sadness, worthlessness, all poured into his cup at an early age. Okay, while the child on the right, she's getting flowers, learning that she's worthy, that she's special. So she's getting love and joy poured into that cup. So when you are a child, your parents fill up your cup. And when kids are loved, they learn that they are lovable. But the opposite is also true. When kids are not loved, they learn that they are not lovable. So that's how your cup can start getting filled with things like sadness can start to fill your cup, okay? And that's where it starts. Things like startled, when you get startled easily, that comes from shame and sadness and living in a house of chaos. That can get into your cup as well. So the toxic contents that can be poured into your cup can be disappointment, worthlessness, addiction, people-pleasing. All of that goes into your cup. And then those toxic contents creates holes inside that only you can see. Everyone else just sees what's on the outside. They say, oh, she's so pretty. But in the inside, they don't see the struggle. They don't see what you go through. It also creates an imprint that dictates how you see yourself. It dictates how you see yourself and how you interpret the motives of others, and that causes you to create laws based upon the environment that you grew up in. So you see the glasses there? It tells you don't trust. It says all men cheat. It says people use me. It says people lie. So it's almost as if you take your glasses and you dip them into the toxic contents of your cup. And then you go out into the world, and that's how you see things. That's how you experience the world, based upon the toxic contents in your cup. So those toxic contents create an imprint, both inside and out. It determines how you see yourself. You see the imprint on your glasses. So it gives you instructions. It tells you you're not good enough. So when you go apply for that job, you automatically think you're not going to get it because everything that you see is imprinted with, you're not good enough. I don't know why you're applying for this job. Your self-image is based upon the messages that you receive from others. So if your parent tells you, oh, you're making too much noise, or you're constantly this, you're too that, that gets imprinted on your glasses. And it also dictates how you see others and interpret their motives. So if your parents were constantly fighting, or one of your parents were constantly cheating on the other, then that's how you see life. So that's an imprint on your glasses, that all men cheat. So you go out into the world with that on your glasses, and you just think all men cheat because that's what you saw. So your interpretation of the actions and motives of others are based upon what you saw others do. And it creates laws based upon your toxic environment. So you figure out how to navigate life based upon the ingredients in your cup. Very similar to how you had to do it when you were still inside the womb. The same way the mom's hormones taught you how to navigate life, now on the outside, you're still learning the same thing. So how does that affect your relationship? So if you see on your glasses that that people can't be trusted, that all men cheat, like I said before, that you're not enough, that you have to people please. You go out into the world with that on your glasses, and then everybody you see, is affected by that. You don't see any different. Everything is filtered through that lens. Okay? So you teach people how to treat you based upon how you act. So imagine this is you, this is your cup, and on the outside of your cup, you have you're not enough, because eventually what's on the inside is going to come out on the outside. It's not going to stay inside. So if you believe that you're not enough, you teach people how to treat you. Hopefully somewhere along the line you learned that you were accepted, but that's kind of few and far between. So you don't believe it, even if it is inside, because there's so much toxic content inside that you can't get that. It doesn't transcend to you. So you treat people based upon your past instead of what's actually happening. So everything that's in here is guiding you. This is what you're going by. This is your guide. Okay? And then when someone does walk up to you, if someone does walk up to you and they don't see all of that for some reason, you don't see it. You don't believe it. Okay? You see them based upon what's imprinted on your glasses. Okay? And then if you do have someone who sees it because you have the instructions that you're not enough, they say, okay, I believe that you're not enough, so they treat you that way. If it says you don't trust anyone, and then he says, well, that's great because I can't be trusted. And if it says all men cheat, he'll be like, great, sign me up, because I cheat too. So all the instructions that you have based upon how you grew up are written on your cup. And you're showing people. So if you're wondering why you always attract a certain type of person, that's because you have it written on your cup. You have the instructions. You're teaching people how to treat you based upon your past, based upon your hurt and your trauma from your childhood. And everything is tainted by your past. So how do we empty out? How do we start over? Okay. First, pouring from an empty cup. That's one of the sayings that people say. How do you pour from an empty cup? Well, most cups aren't empty. It's just that the toxic fumes don't give you any substance. It makes you feel like it's something there, but there's no substance to toxicity. Okay, so you can often feel alone. You can often feel empty. You often feel drained and unloved. And you often feel taken advantage of. And some people, they have, it's called to be an empath, where you feel everything. You feel everything because the things that you wanted to feel as a child, you didn't get to experience that. So now you want to make sure no one feels that way either. So that's how you can get into people pleasing. That's how you can still feel empty because you're not getting what you needed. So if you look at a cup with many holes, if someone's pouring poison into you, eventually it's going to come out in holes. It's going to damage the inside, okay? But you're going to feel like you have something in you, but it's just, it won't stick. So you'll attract predators. That predator will be attached to your holes, okay? And which is what predators often do. You often find yourself in abusive relationships, have low self-esteem, often controlling of others, and you have multiple failed relationships. And that is how it feels to have a cup with many holes in it. Everything you pour in just comes out. You know, and that's how you walk around feeling. You get attached to people easily and don't know how to get unattached because you're afraid of what it would feel like to be alone. Okay? So that's why it's so important to empty out this cup of what toxicity was put into it. Okay? Now, you couldn't control what happened, you know, with your parents. You couldn't control the fact that maybe they gave you all that they could give you. You know, maybe your parents' cup had toxic contents in it too, but that's all they had to pour into you because they didn't know any better. So what do? We have to start over. We have to first trust the process, okay, and do the work. You have to fill up this cup daily and begin to see situations at face value. And we have to forgive. And forgiveness is letting go of the hope that things could have been any different. And then we have to have faith. We have to act like, we have to believe. Act on your beliefs about who you are. Okay? So, emptying out will be very important because it's difficult to put new information in with the old. But one way you can start over is definitely to find a new source. Find a new source of your joy, okay? And if you read Psalms 23, it says, "The Lord is my shepherd." That means the Lord is my source, okay? So you're no longer going to depend on your earthly parents to fill you up. You're no longer going to depend on what they put inside of you anymore. So it says he leads me. So we're going to trust the Lord to lead you to where you need to go. And that's what an earthly parent would do. Earthly parents are supposed to lead you. And as they lead you, that adds more drops into your cup. Refreshes my soul. That's what earthly parents should do as well. Refresh your soul. Guide you. I will fear no evil. Protect you. Comfort you. So that's saying that things happen. Things will happen in the world. You know, you will have situations where you are sad. But to have a parent who will protect you and comfort you, that's adding some positive contents into your cup. Okay? And then anoint my head. And my cup overflows. So if all of that happens, okay, if you have someone to lead you, someone to guide you, someone to protect you, someone to comfort you, it's as if you're getting all of that poured into your cup, and your cup will eventually begin to overflow. Okay, and it says, with goodness, surely your goodness and your love. So eventually you will overflow with goodness and love, but you have to do the work. You have to be able to find a new source to add to your cup. So what's in your cup now? So if you've asked yourself, what is in your cup now? What does your cup reflect? Okay, this cup is really pretty. Okay, but what's in it? So we have to ask ourselves and be honest, What is in your cup? How is what's in your cup dictating how you see life, how you see others? So when you come into a situation, can you be empathetic? Do you have that in your cup? Did you learn that? If you are encouraged, can you encourage others? And encouraging others is part of that overflow. That's a benefit of overflow, being able to encourage someone else. Being able to say, hey, I see you. I understand how you feel. Being fulfilled. That is a benefit of overflow. Being fulfilled, being able to help someone else, being so full that you can help others. And I look at this as a self-esteem cup. And this cup isn't something that you can fill on the fly. It's not an easy process. It's not a quick process. But the work is necessary. It has to be done. And I talk to a lot of singles. And you can tell that this cup isn't full, okay? Because if you try to start a relationship with an empty cup, then you'll be looking for your partner to fill it up. But he or she is only gonna fill it up with what he has in his cup. So that's why it's important to do your work now as a single person. You know, fill it up. Fill up the self-esteem cup now. Or empty it out. See what's in it first. See what's going on. This comes from A Jar of Feelings, and it talks about, just has different feelings in it. Vindictive. If you find yourself being vindictive, where does that come from? And that's a reason to inspect the contents of your cup. What's happening if you find yourself always in abusive, toxic relationships? Then it's time to inspect, because like I said before, we walk around with these pretty outsides, but the inside is not so pretty. And that's why it's important to inspect your cup, inspect the contents of your cup. Now, once you do that, once you realize, okay, I found a new source and I am protected, and you start to get some positivity going into that cup, you need to begin to refill that cup every day. Okay? And what does that look like? It's self-care. Self-care is so important. People talk about self-care just as much as they talk about filling up cups. Self-care is taking time to recharge, refresh, create, and reflect. Okay? So taking time to recharge is just taking time to yourself. If you work 7 days a week, take at least one day to recharge. We don't tell our cell phones, hey, look, I charged you yesterday. You don't get any more juice. We don't tell our cars, hey, I put gas in you last week. We respond. When that gas light comes on, we respond. When the red comes on the cell phone, we respond and we plug it up. We need to do the same for ourselves. That's why self-care is so important, to take time to recharge, refresh, and create. Creativity lets the brain know that you're safe. So if you're living a life of chaos, if you were living a life of chaos, being able to create, being able to do things like adult coloring books, that lets your brain know that you're safe. So as we try to refill and put some positive contents into this cup, you have to begin to create. And then reflect. Reflect on the decisions that you're making, reflect on the company that you're keeping. That's very important, and it's a part of self-care. And learning your love language. If your love language is quality time doesn't mean that you have to spend quality time with another person. It could also mean that you spend quality time with you, with yourself, having a cup of tea, sitting down, sitting outside, grounding yourself. Walking around just outside with no shoes on is grounding yourself. Okay, and that's a part of self-care, just being able to reflect, recharge, refresh, and create. And doing positive affirmations, that creates new connections with your brain, and it gives you new beliefs about who you are. At first, it might feel like, you know, you're lying to yourself at first, because if you've had 40 years of this toxic content and now you empty it out, it might feel a little foreign to put something positive in, because at first, you know, it might feel like you're empty. But if you keep doing this daily, if you keep telling yourself, I am great, I am enough, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that every time that you say that puts more positive drops into your cup. And eventually, you say it long enough, you'll believe it. You say it long enough, you'll create new brain connections. Dr. DeeDee talks about neuroplasticity all the time, and positive affirmations is part of that. It creates new connections. So before, the connections were, I'm not enough, I'll never be enough. Then you start telling yourself that you are enough, and you say it enough times, you put it with this self-care and this new creating new things and reflecting, then eventually, you know, you will start to believe it, and you will start to act on it. And faith is acting on new beliefs about who you are. So you had faith. A lot of people have faith about things going wrong. So they act on that. They act on the belief that things will go wrong. So what does that look like? They don't try. Oh, there's no point in applying for that job. Oh, there's no point in doing this or doing that, because they believe that it'll go wrong. So you have faith. But let's turn that faith around to a more positive state, and act on your new beliefs about yourself. If you believe I'm enough, then you know what? Then you're going to go out for that job. If you believe you're enough, then you're going to try it. You're going to open that business, and you won't be afraid to do it. So we're going to act on new beliefs about who you are, and we're going to start to look at situations based upon face value, and not based upon the old glasses that you had. So you almost have to, I do a lot of visualization in my practice. So I'll have people actually take off their glasses and wipe them off to symbolize, okay, you're wiping off the toxic contents that you were dipped in, okay? So if you've emptied out and you started to pour more positive things into your cup, and then you dip your glasses in that, you understand that goodness and mercy follow you. You understand that you are enough. So then you can take situations at face value. You don't have to process anything through your pain. You can take it at face value and know, okay, well, maybe I wasn't chosen because it wasn't the job for me. Not that I wasn't chosen because I'm worthless. You know, that's what your old system would tell you. But now you can take it at face value. So you have to do this daily. This isn't just a one-time thing. This is a day-to-day work, okay? So you didn't become this person overnight, you know, so you're not going to become another person, you know, overnight. You have to give yourself patience, okay? Be patient with yourself. And know that every day you're doing something. You're doing something to better yourself. You don't have to be better than anybody else but who you were yesterday. You don't have to compare yourself to the little snapshot that people give you on Instagram. They could have 23 bad hours, but they take that one moment and then make it seem like their life is so great. So don't compare yourself to anybody except who you were yesterday. And then even if you start to feel down, you start to feel, because nothing says that, you know, you're not going to have, that you're going to have great, all of your days are going to be great. But when you learn to cope, you can be fortunate. You know, you can pull out all of these things and still be okay. Things don't have to rock you. Things don't have to destroy your life. When you have positive contents in here, you can have the ability to cope because you know that you have resources. And then when the sadness does come up, acknowledge how you feel. You can acknowledge, okay, I'm sad today, but act on what you know. So you might know, well, you do know that all things work for the good of those who love the Lord. So acknowledge how you feel, but act on what you know, because feelings aren't facts. Feelings just locate you, but they're not facts. Okay? So you can act on what you know. So now, I ask you again, what's in your cup? So if you look in there and you realize, okay, I need some work. I need to do some work. Therapy is a great place to start. And with this being Mental Health Awareness Month, this is a great time to reach out to a therapist and figure out what's in this cup so that you don't pass it along to the next generation. Because like, as I said before, trauma changes genes, okay? And we don't want to continue these generational things just by not taking the time to figure out what's in my cup? What am I passing down? Am I seeing things through these tainted glasses? Am I willing to do the work? So hopefully this month, this Mental Health Awareness Month, will help you to really locate yourself, figure out what's going on, figure out what have you been carrying around. You know, inspect your glasses, inspect your cup. Then don't just walk around, don't be content enough to walk around with a pretty outside and being empty on the inside, or having toxic holes on the inside. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. There's my information. You can reach out to my website, and also on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook as well. And we do have merchandise on our website. You can look at that as well. So again, my name is Terry McCall, and my question is, what's in your cup?
You called me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, when oceans deep, my faith will stand. Call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you
Terry. I told you, you guys were going to be blessed by listening to Terry. All right, thank you, Faith City Music, for being a part of our mental health awareness as well. Pastor Tim, you are doing a phenomenal job with our team, and I really appreciate you for making this happen for the people that are watching and viewing right now, right? All right, so now we are about to go to Dr. Coleman. Dr. Coleman is like everything for me. I mean, I so appreciate him. He is our psychiatrist on our staff. He is always active and a part. All of the licensed counselors, everyone that you have heard, our partners here in our ministry. Pastor Mike always teaches us that everything you need is in the house. And we know that we have the best right here in the house. And so right now we are about to go to Dr. Coleman. Dr. Coleman is going to teach us, like, no, look, if you are a pastor or a pastor's wife and you are having challenges, you need to make sure you lean into this man. He has a phenomenal book that he has written, and he's going to share that with you guys, or we're going to put it up so you can make sure you purchase it. But Dr. Coleman want to talk to us ministers. He want to teach us how to deal with different things that we could be dealing with. So at this time, I would like to present to you Dr. Daryl Coleman.
Hi, thank you, Dr. DeeDee, for that introduction. Thank you all for coming to Mental Health Awareness Month. I hope all of the presentations have blessed you. Today, I want to talk about the church and mental illness. My name is Dr. Daryl Coleman. I am the president and CEO of Nemelic Whole Life Center, where we treat all types of mental illnesses. We have locations in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. We're going to look at facts about mental illness, stigma, common mental illnesses, mental illness and the church. What's the relationship between mental illness and the church? Healing and wellness. Let's look at some facts about mental illness first. Mental illness is a medical illness that affects one's mood, thinking, and behavior. It's more common than cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Most people don't realize that. It's 40 million Americans. 20% of Americans have mental illness. That's 1 in 5 individuals. So if you're in a room with 5 people, one of those individuals may have a mental illness. That's more than the population of New York City and Florida combined. Over half of Americans, adults with mental illness, don't receive treatment. And that's because of stigma. Over half of people with mental illness don't receive treatment. Most individuals with mental illness live in the community and they're very productive. Mental illness first occurs in adolescents and young adults. Okay, let's look at specific mental illnesses. We're going to talk about major depression and anxiety. Let's talk about major depression first. What does it say in the Bible about depression? Now, in the Bible, it doesn't describe major depression or bipolar disorder, anxiety, or other mental illnesses, but it describes symptoms of those illnesses. Elijah said, he cried out to God, I have had enough. Lord, he said, take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. That's in Kings 19:4. Elijah reminded in this distraught condition for He stayed in this distraught condition for 40 days and nights, distressed and unable to meet his basic needs. David, a man of God, in laments, was depressed and in pain. He said in Psalm 6:7, I am worn out from my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears. My eyes grow weak with sorrow. They fail because of all of my foes. Depression affects 15 to 20% of individuals in the community. The other thing is to remember that untreated mental illness, there's a high risk of suicide. In depression, it's 15 to 20% of the individuals die from suicide. Even though there's about 15 to 20% individuals with mental illness and will suicide, that is a very high rate. Women are twice as likely than men to have depression. The number of individuals who have mental illness increases by 20% each year. Now, major depression is not normal. Sadness is normal. Sadness is short-lived. It doesn't affect your life, like it doesn't affect your relationship, school, your work, and you can deal with sadness. But major depression is an illness, a mental health illness. With this illness, you feel depressed. Your sleep can increase or decrease. Your appetite can increase or decrease. You have feelings of worthlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, and you may have thoughts of suicide. Now, let's talk about anxiety disorders very quickly. In Philippians 4:6, it says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. One of the things is, in the Bible, it talks about anxiety a lot. Matthew 6:34 says, therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Some anxiety is actually normal. When you have anxiety, your adrenaline goes up. And that helps you if you have to, example, run away from a dog. So your adrenaline goes up, you may get shortness of breath, lightheadedness, dizziness, in order to get away from that dog. That's normal. Normal anxiety is intermittent. It may last for a few days, for a few hours, but it doesn't last for a long period of time. Normal anxiety can include taking an exam, getting married, school, becoming a parent. Now let's talk about problematic anxiety. So what happens when it is not normal? What are the symptoms? Problematic anxiety is chronic. It is irrational. It is not normal for that situation, and it interferes with life, like going to school, going to work, etc. It's an exaggerated response to a situation, and it lasts usually for minutes, sometimes hours. Now, stigma and mental illness. Stigma is associated with disgrace and public disapproval of individuals with mental illness. Disgrace and public disapproval. They're crazy, stupid, lazy, violent. None of those things are true. There are individuals who are in jails or prison who have mental illnesses that can present as violence, but that's not the majority of individuals with mental illness. Stigma. 90% of individuals with mental illness experience stigma and discrimination. In one study, it said in the general population, I don't want to live next to anybody who has mental illness. A woman would be foolish to marry someone with a mental illness. Anyone that has a history of mental problems should be excluded from public office. That was in one study. Stigma, the major reason people acknowledge their mental illness or get treatment is due to stigma. So the reason they don't acknowledge it or get treatment is due to stigma. The church has a history of stigmatizing mental illness. We often see it as moral failure and not a medical illness. This lady said, after my suicide attempt at age 14, I felt like I could never go back to church again. In the eyes of the church, I had committed the greatest sin. I couldn't tell anyone because I knew it would be labeled. I would be out of church for 6 years, and then I went to another church. That's stigma. Now, let's talk about mental illness in the church. What's the relationship between mental illness and the church? In the U.S., the church is near the top institute that there's a great deal of confidence, more than you see in the U.S. Supreme Court, public schools, the medical system, and others. In general, Americans seek clergy more than they do mental health professionals. 1/4, 25% of people seek treatment for mental illness, and they go first to a member of clergy. So 25% of individuals go to clergy than they do to another profession to treat mental illness spiritually. This is higher than is seen for psychiatrists, general practitioners, and also medical doctors. Clergy is often serves as the front line for treatment for mental illness, and the only line. A clergy is very important when it comes to treatment of mental illness. Americans seek clergy for problems such as serious mental illness, substance, alcohol use, marital problems, family problems, and depression, major mental health issues. Some Americans seek counseling from clergy because they have confidence in clergy, insurance and co-payments aren't required, services are provided free of charge, and they don't have to get forms completed. Silence about mental health situation in the church fosters stigma and gossip. Appropriate transparency leads to trust and compassion, and it signals to the members of the congregation that their mental health may be addressed. This shows that pastors talk about mental illness very little, maybe one time a year in sermons, but 60% of the individuals want to hear about mental illness in sermons. Tom Rainer, President and CEO of Lifeway Christian Resources said, many pastors are reticent to say anything about their depression, lest they will be seen as unfaithful to God and unable to help others. Most seminaries do not educate about mental illness. Rick Warren said, I was unprepared to deal with mental illness by my actions. However, I could deal with a broken leg and I could refer to a doctor. 30% of pastors feel well-equipped to treat mental illness. However, 70% don't feel comfortable. Okay, what are some of the numbers? If we look at clergy and mental illness, does mental illness affect clergy? 75% of clergy report severe stress causing anguish, worry, anger, depression, fear, and alienation. 75% of pastors want to quit because of their mental illness. 15,000 pastors leave their ministry each month because of burnout. Doctors, lawyers, and clergy have the most problems with drug abuse, alcohol, and suicide. 45% of pastors say they experience depression and burnout and have to take leaves of absence from church. The rate of depression in clergy is double that of the general population. A sense of guilt is the major predictor of depression, and doubting their call is the major reason for the anxiety. It is particularly disturbing how many pastors are struggling with emotional pain and family problems. 70% say that their self-esteem is lower once they've been in the ministry than it was when they started. And 70% fight from depression. Some of the reasons why pastors have mental illness or mental health symptoms. Spiritual warfare. The enemy doesn't want God's servants to be effective in the ministry. He would do whatever it takes to hurt the minister or their ministry. Unrealistic expectations on the pastor. Greater platforms for criticism. It used to be that you could criticize the pastor via via one-on-one. But now you can do it by Facebook and by other ways, therefore confronting the pastor more directly. Pastors also have mental illness because of marital problems and family problems, financial strain, and problems with comparison of their churches more so than others' churches. Let's talk about getting treatment for mental illness as a clergy member and when to refer to a mental health professional. Referring to treatment will decrease the rate of poor outcomes in mental health. When someone you see or you experience thoughts of emotions or out of control, especially when they are affecting your relationships, school, etc., you should get treatment. When you or someone else are struggling to deal with life's painful challenges, get treatment. When you or someone else is using drugs or alcohol which interfere with your health or emotions, get treatment. When you or someone else are confused, fraught with emotions, and need the perspective of a caring individual, get treatment. When you or someone else feel that life is not worth living, I'm all alone, there's no one to help me, get treatment. If you're thinking, I hate myself, 1 John 4:10 says, you are loved. I feel useless. 2 Corinthians 1:3-4 says you are needed. I don't matter. Colossians 1:16 says you have a purpose. I don't fit in. Romans 12:4-5 says you belong. And remember, when you're going through these episodes of depression and anxiety, remember, it's God's footsteps in the sand, not yours. Okay, health and wellness. There has been old fragmented thinking between the church and healthcare individuals. Seeking medical treatment demonstrates a lack of faith. That's what's been said. They have been told by their pastors, walk in your healing. You don't have to go to a mental health professional. Experienced depression is stereotyped and stigmatized more than individuals with mental health than the general public. This says that most people think that suicide needs to be expressed and talked about in church. Mental illness is not a character defect. The church needs to embrace a holistic model as it relates to mental illness. The church cannot fix the problem with mental illness except with faith, but they can offer support to help them cope. The church must create a climate of unconditional love. Okay, what model is this? It's a health wellness model. It's a mind-body spiritual model that we're looking at when we talk about wholeness. Wellness occurs when there is congruency between the spirit, the body, and the mind. Illness and sickness occur when there is a disassociation with the body, mind, and spirit. Now, if you look at the continuum between the mind, body, and spirit, which we do in our practice, we will evaluate if there's a spiritual disconnect, a mind disconnect, or a body disconnect. We can treat that. And many times when there's a spiritual disconnect, we will refer them to clergy. Research says that individuals who are religious have better mental health outcomes. Also, it says that mental illness and treatment by clergy decreases the depression, anxiety, substance disorder, schizophrenia, and suicide. Religiosity associated with better physical outcomes and subjective well-being. The wellness model does work. Okay, the church's responsibility. What is the church's responsibility when it comes to mental illness? Having seminars like Spirit of Faith is doing right now. Spirit of Faith is beyond the curve now as it relates to to training about mental illness. So it's far beyond most churches. Encourage clergy to get more training about mental illness. Remember, if 25% of individuals with mental illness are going to go to clergy, clergy must understand the faith treatment for individuals with mental illness. Involve mental health providers. So when an individual in your congregation needs mental health treatment, you should be able to say, well, in the congregation, we have so-and-so that help with individuals who have mental illness. Make sure that when you refer individuals with mental illness, when the need arises, that again, you refer them to individuals in your congregation who believe in what they believe. Stay in touch with individuals in your congregation that have mental illness. Encourage your congregation to treat people with mental illness the same way that they treat other individuals. Plan specific days for focus on mental health, like Spirit of Faith is doing right now. Talk about mental health or mental illness in sermons, classes, adult forums. Pay attention to stigmatizing words. Clergy training for mental health issues in seminary would be extremely important, and it would allow for greater communication between a therapist in the community and clergy. If most individuals with mental illness are going to see clergy, in seminary, we need to get education on mental illness. So if you're not getting that education, go to your chancellor of other individuals and say, I really want some training in mental illness. The church can be a voice for the voiceless, helping to reduce the stigma often associated with people with mental illness. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalms 147:3. Now, what I'd like to end with is peace with your scars. You can't live very long without being injured, going through hurt and pain. Sometimes the wounds heal up, and there's no sign that it ever happened. But there are certain wounds that are so deep that the pain goes away, but it leaves a scar. There are physical scars, and there are scars that can be seen that are visual and emotional. Scars that come from inner wounds from past trauma, depression, anxiety, burnout, or just the stress of being a pastor. So often we try to hide our scars. We don't see anything positive about the scars. It reminds us of the hurt that we went through. But we need to see the scars in a different way. Be at peace with your scars. God did not allow the scar to discourage you. He allowed it to remind you of what He brought you through. When you see the scars of depression, anxiety, or just mental illness, thank God for His grace. The scars mean that the wound is healed. The pain and the stigma associated with your mental illness is over, and you have moved forward. The scar is a reminder of how faithful God has been. Without his mercy, that mental illness could have stopped your purpose. Without his healing, that sickness could have been the end. When you're tempted to get discouraged, thinking the obstacle is too big, just look at that scar. Be at peace with your scars. God restored you and healed you. The pain is over. God helped you through the loss of a loved one. It wasn't easy, but the scar is a reminder of God's goodness. God did it for me back then. I know he'll do it for me right now. If you see your scar the right way, it will be fuel for your faith and a reminder of the goodness of God. But you don't have to hide your scars. You don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed of the stigma. It's just a reminder of what you've been through. Be at peace with your scars. No one in the scripture has fulfilled their destiny without scars. We don't understand why things happen like COVID, an unexpected death, a loss of people who are close to us. The devil comes against us. If you're going to fulfill your destiny, you have to experience scars. Don't be depressed, embarrassed, or anxious by what you went through, thinking it was unfair. Have a new perspective. The enemy tried to stop you, but God healed you. Don't be embarrassed of it. Don't be depressed about it. Be at peace with your scars. You know it was the hand of God protecting you. Don't let the opposition defeat you. The scars don't have to remind you of the pain. It can remind you of the goodness of God. Since it was painful, you came through it. It didn't kill you. It showed you the strength of God within you. Walk and pray through your scars and get spiritual treatment as well as mental health treatment. For your scars of depression, anxiety, and pain need this type of treatment. Look at them knowing that God restored you and kept you. You are stronger because of your scars. God heals and restores you. Don't be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. Be at peace with your scars. Thank you.
This is so sad because I don't want to let you go. I don't want to let you go. Look, make sure that you avail yourselves to this information. There is no way you can tell me that you have retained everything that was shared on last week and on this week. Dr. Coleman even just blew our minds and gave us some more powerful information that can cause increase in our lives. And so it's so important that you really go back and listen to it all again. We are here at the end of our 2-week time with sharing with you about mental health. Please go out, share with someone the information that you have really gathered in these last 2 weeks so you can be a blessing to them. I'm telling you, people suffer in silence all the time. They may not share with you what they are going through. So it's so important that you share with them what you have learned. I didn't say what you are going through, but what you have learned. All right, if you care, you share. All right, I love you guys. Thank you so much again for being a part of our mental health awareness. Thank you to all of our licensed counselors, our doctors, our psychologists, our psychiatrists, our therapists, all of you. You did a phenomenal job just like you do every week. Don't forget, we have information on the screen if you are dealing with, some suicidal thoughts and you need help. Please reach out to someone. You don't have to deal with this thing alone. We want to be here for you. If you need prayer, call us. We are here. We will pray for you. And also make sure you are sowing into this ministry. You want to sow into what has blessed your life. And we also invite you to be a part of our services tomorrow, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12, and again 7 p.m. at our nightcap. All right, I'm praying for you. I'm believing God for victory in your life.
Like, share, and comment. Let's go. I'll sing like there's nobody listening but you. Got our brother Tim Riddick with us today. Yeah. I'll dance like there's nobody watching but you. Oh, yeah. I'll worship with my last breath. Give my all till there's nothing left. My focus is you. Jesus, you are my center. My hope, my treasure is found in you. I'll sing your praises forever. My love, my life, I give to you. I'll sing like there's nobody listening but you.
Come on, wherever you're watching from, raise that with us. Yeah, and I will dance.
I'll dance like there's nobody.
Audience of one, I worship.
With my
I will give my all. Hey. My focus is yours. Yeah. See, Jesus, you're the center.
You are the center. My hope, my treasure.
And I will sing.
I'll sing your praises forever.
I'll stay right here where I'm welcome. You can build your home on my worship. I'll stay right here. You can
build your home on my worship. I'll stay right here where I'm
Come on, somebody declare it. You can build. Oh yes, oh yes, oh. See, I'm staying.
You can build.
Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your court. 10,000 elsewhere. 10,000 elsewhere. Better is one day. You wanna sing it like you mean it. Better is one day in your house. Sing it like you receive it. Better is one. 10,000, thousands. 10,000 over. Better is one day. Hey, all right.